Well, hey there, everyone. Doggin Days here, and today we'll be continuing our tournament recap series. As you know, as people who have been following this channel know, this is a series I started in early 2025 to cover all of the events that I attended specifically in 2025, but possibly onward. We could possibly continue the series onward if there is interest. 2025 is, as people know, an important year for me as a Heroscaper because it is the 20th anniversary of my favorite unit in the game, which is Dünd from Classic Heroscape. He was released in Orm's Return in July of 2005, 20 years ago. So this year, is 20 years since his debut in Heroscape, and that makes me very happy. And to celebrate, I've been covering all of the events that I attend this year in this PowerPoint style of video, but I will say, I have been increasing the volume of competitive events that I've been attending, and these PowerPoints, they don't take super long to put together, but they do take time, and it's becoming kind of daunting to keep up with every event I go to in this style of video. And if I want to get better at this game, as I do, I'm going to have to further increase the number of events that I attend, and I just don't know if I'll be able to keep up in this style of video. But at least for 2025, I want to do this style of video for every competitive event I attend, and yeah, I hope you all enjoy, and we will jump right into it. As you can see, these are two events, not back-to-back, but two different events I scrunched into a single video. The reason for that is GenCon 2025 is coming up, and I will be attending GenCon, and I wanted to catch up cataloging all of the events that I attended so far that I haven't cataloged on this channel. I want to get all of them down, locked in, and uploaded to the channel before I go to Gen Con, because Gen Con is going to get its own tournament recap video, and that one is going to be a doozy. So I just kind of want to knock these out in a single video. I'm just calling these the Pre-Gen Con locals in my scene. These are on June 14th and July 19th of 2025, and we will jump right in and talk about these events. So the first event that I attended was in June 14th, and this is the all-time cheese format, or it's called all-time cheese. As you can see, there's the Renegade Games Studios logo at the bottom. This was a store championship. So the last video I did, two back-to-back store championships. This would be the last store championship I attended in 2025. So there's more at stake in store championships, but the reason I was going to this event was mainly to help a buddy of mine. And if you guys have been following the saga of this channel, the saga of my group, my friend group, and my local scene, you will know that my friend Alex, he went to one of the two store championships that I attended and covered in my last video, and his goal was to win the gold Awashia. He wanted to win the gold Awashia, and I'm sure he would have, wanted to win the day 2 buy in those past two events, but he wasn't able to do it. And so we both, I told him, man, I am going to help you. I'm going to do everything I can to get you the win at this event. And if I can be there, then that's at least one other person who will be fighting for that gold Awashia for you. I won my gold Awashia in the last event, and if I won a gold Awashia again, I would give it to Alex. So that was my goal for this event, but let's go ahead and cover the format here. So the unit pool is Classic, Dungeons and Dragons, and Contemporary units, no Marvel or VC, unfortunately, but it's a store championship, that makes sense. These the Contemporary units, I believe, were everything before the Crabs wave, Boiling Tension, the Scavareth wave. Not that you would have it in June per se, but if you somehow did, you couldn't use it for this event. The points were 500 Renegade points, so basically classic points except for those 10 units that they rebalanced. The figure limit is 24, hex limit is 24, and then the special rules, like all store championships, all figures, cards, dice, and other game pieces must be official. So that means no custom cards, no proxies, and no 3D printing. It all has to be official. So that was the rule for this event. I don't make up the rules, but I understand why they have those in place. So that's what we're looking at for all-time cheese at this event. And man, I was pumped for this one because there was just that extra goal I had of helping my friend get through this event and win it and take home those prizes that he had so wanted. So I do want to mention on that note, in the last video that I made, I think the way that I framed Alex in that video, I think the way I portrayed his desire to win those pieces, I think I made him come off much more toxic than he was. I think I said something in the video like, oh, I'm Alex and I just want to win. He's not like that. If he came off like that in the video, please know he's not like that. I didn't intend that. I meant it kind of tongue in cheek. Like, usually he's a bit more casual when playing, but it's a store championship. He really liked the idea of getting a gold Awashia, and he was like, I'll run whatever army I need to run. I just want to win. But he's genuinely a pleasure to play, and he's a good sport, and I just want to clear that up, that he's not a toxic guy. If he was a toxic guy, I wouldn't be playing with him. So that's just one thing I wanted to cover. So if he came off like that in the past video, just disregard that. Most of that was said tongue-in-cheek, as I said. But speaking of those prizes that my friend wanted to win, this is a copied slide from the last video I did, but these are the prizes you can win you could win if you attended one of these store championships in 2025. So just for those who aren't aware, all participants, just for showing up to the event, you'll get this nice set of Aquila order markers. It's a cool collectible, and I've seen a lot of people using these markers since they obtained them at store championships. They were giving them out like candy, and just for showing up, you will walk away with something. So that is pretty nice. 2nd through 8th place will get a very nice silver-based Awashia and a gold foil card. So another great collectible and a way to commemorate the fact that you attended a store championship in 2025. And I think I said in the last video, 2nd through 8th place in most local tournaments, which maybe have anywhere from 10 to 20 people attending, usually 2nd through 8th place, very obtainable. If you fight hard, if you put some thought into your army, you should be able to get this if you fight well enough. And then 1st place, the big prize, as many of us know, was the gold-based Awashia, and specifically the Day 2 buy at the 2025 Gen Con World Championship. So 2 very big prizes, much harder to win 1st place at a Heroscape event, but you would walk away with a pretty cool trophy if you did. So it was specifically the 1st place stuff. Alex already had his silver Awashia and was certainly grateful for it, but it was that 1st place gold Awashia that he really wanted. And he knew that I was going to Gen Con and he wanted to come with me. And so I think he said, if I can get the buy at the Day 2 buy, then I can justify the expense. If I can't, understandably, I can't go. Makes total sense. That's totally reasonable. So this is what we were facing. This was a big event for both of us. I wanted to help him. I wanted to help Theorycraft for him, help him design an army that would win the format. And worst case, I would like to at least one of us walk home with the gold Awashia so that I could give it to him. So that's kind of the background, our background going into this event. I've talked enough about that. Let's go ahead and talk about, and I just had that little note there. Help Alex take 1st so he can join me at Gen Con, or at least win him the gold Awashia. I'm sure even if he didn't get the Day 2 buy, he would have been very happy with the gold Awashia. So that was our goal for this event. Now let's actually talk. Oh, yep, I copied this one over too. This is a slide. You can pause the screen if you want to. Anytime we do Renegade points, I want to include this slide. This right now are the 10, these are the 10 units that Renegade has rebalanced points wise. You can see their old points and then their new points. Generally, I think these are good changes, but in the future, I hope Renegade goes further with rebalancing. So it's a good 1st step, but I think more needs to be done. Right now, nothing beats Delta. VC Delta, chef's kiss. That's how you play this game, as far as I'm concerned. But it is what it is. It's a good 1st step. So anyway, that is the rebalance for the units. And now we're going to talk about the format and my thoughts on the format. You know what I think about this format? I think it sucks. I think this is a terrible, terrible, terrible format. And there's a couple reasons why, and I'm going to frame them in a kind of syllogism. So let's go through the premises and the conclusion. So all-time cheese at 500 points with 24 figure limits and 24 hex limits heavily favor common squad spam. And that's pretty intuitive. Any format that allows this many figures at classic points, it's common squads are going to dominate. But we've known that for years. So that's not the worst part of it. You can play those formats. It's fine. At the time of this event, only classic D&D had common squads, as we know. Common squads have since been announced, but haven't been officially released for contemporary. So if you want to run common spam, you got to go classic and D&D, right? So therefore, classic D&D units were favored. No big surprise there. But classic D&D units being favored, then you consider Renegade Store Championships only allow for official figures to be used, no proxying or 3D printing, as we said. Official classic D&D units are out of print and extremely expensive, especially the competitive common squads, because everyone is snatching those up and the scarcity is jacking up the price. So there's that you have to contend with. Finally, that means, as far as I'm concerned, this is a pay-to-win format. If you don't already own lots of competitive classic or official classic D&D figures, you're going to have to pay out the wazoo if you want to run a spam of them. So I just think this is really an unfortunate format to have for a store championship. It's really going to reward people who invested in Heroscape long ago, and for the people who are getting back into it, I mean, tough, man. Like, that's just, it's a damn shame that you can't run 3D printed figures in these store championships, but I understand why. And I guess, too, you should add that, yes, you can reach out and ask people, hey, could I borrow these squads, or can I borrow this figure? That, yeah, sure, you can do that. But obviously, there's a consequence to doing that, and that means you're revealing to at least one person, or many people if you ask multiple people, you're revealing to them the kind of units you're thinking of bringing, and that might tip them off to the kind of build they're bringing, and they might try to counterdraft into that. So it's sort of like, I don't want to have to give intel on the unit I'm running if I don't have to, right? So that's kind of the issue with asking to borrow figures, but it can be done. But yeah, I just think this is a terrible format. I was really unhappy with it, and during the whole practice for this format, I was just saying, yeah, this is terrible. This format sucks. So anyway, but that's what we're going into. We can't change it, and that's what was voted on. And so yeah, now we got to play into it. So we will go into the theory crafting for it, and the theory crafting for this was largely helping Alex and theory crafting for Alex. And one army that was floated by someone who's in our server but no longer in drivable distance to us, and that's Kobe. Kobe recommended the stinger spam. He's like, yeah, this format, I mean, if it's 24 figures, you just run 8 stingers. That's 480 points. You sit 20 points, but I mean, man, what a powerhouse army. At least conceptually, at least theoretically, it seemed really strong. Here are the points as to why this is so strong. First off, people who know competitive Heroscape, stingers are pretty solid. They're consistent as a core squad, and just running a ton of them, yeah, they'll do plenty of work. I think it has to come down to that stat line. You know, the stat line, when you look at it, maybe you think, oh, that's not the craziest stat line in the world. Perhaps not, but it's just the way that these stats gel together, the way that they all function. I think especially too, move 5, range 5, that's a threat range of 5 every single one of these figures, or a threat range of 10 for every single one of these figures at 3 attack, 3 defense. Oof, like just the way that all these numbers gel with each other and interact with each other, it produces a pretty strong squad unit. The other thing with running a single unit in your army is you will have perfect order marker efficiency. You will never be able to mess up your order marker placement. You don't even have to think about it. Just every turn, boom, 3 order markers on the stingers. I can never lose a turn because I misplaced an order marker, or someone destroyed one of my figures that had an order marker on it early. That'll never happen to you. And that is hugely, hugely important. And that is hugely helpful to a player. And then we talked about every turn has a threat range of 10, move plus range. Yep. So that's just really quite threatening. To beat this army, the opponent must destroy 24 figures. That's the other thing, you know, with spam. It just, the more figures you have, that's the more successful attacks the opponent needs to get through. I know that's intuitive, but I think it just bears verbalizing and thinking about that. Yeah, in order to beat this, you have to destroy 24 freaking figures. There's squad figures, sure, but I mean, that's a lot of just bodies to crush through, you know? Or be up ahead on points when the time's up, which is possible too. But even that's kind of difficult with each figure only being 20 points. You know, you get, oh, I got a successful kill. I dropped my opponent 20 points. You know, so there's that. In other words, you don't have when you're running the stinger spam, you don't have a single figure you've invested a lot of points into. It's just all cheapo squad figures. And then the stingers even have hero killing potential. So if they get lucky with their drain, and if they're on height, that's 3 attacks of 5 drop down on a target, and that'll do damage into a hero, even if it's like a Q9 or a figure with really high defense. One of those is getting through and putting some wounds on, usually. So just I mean, intuitively, just looking at it before even playing it, it felt that this was a really strong army. And so my group did not have 8 squads of stingers to use, but we thought, man, as soon as this army was identified, it was like, someone's going to bring this, and we need to prepare for it. And we need to find something within our group collection that is all official that we can use to respond to it. So the question, what do we have to respond? One of the so Sammy is another friend in our group. He wasn't able to make this event, but he initially proposed the axe grinders. Sammy invested in an official squad of axe grinders a long time ago, and we were grateful for it. He's a big proponent of the dwarves, and the dwarves are a very good squad. There's no doubt about it. Personally, when he said use the axe grinders, I thought, I don't know about that. I don't know. I don't think that's going to do well into stingers. None of the axe grinders have range. I mean, Mogrim maybe. He's got quasi range with his commander's strike, but against an army that is all range, all stingers, I think they're going to get gunned down fast. But we decided to test it. So we did axe grinders ×3, Darak, Dorim from the new master set, Isamu, and Mogrim Forgehammer. And so we gave it a shot, and surprise, surprise, the stingers obliterated it. It was merciless. Yeah, it's just, as the dwarves develop, the stingers are shooting at them. Those are several turns where the dwarves can't attack, but the stingers can. It's that threat range. So yeah, we wasn't feeling good about the dwarves. Sammy insisted that there's got to be some way we can run the dwarves to fight the stingers, and I was like, I don't know about that. We tried one more time. We did axe grinders, a burning forge, Isamu. Then we fit in major Q10, and this was thinking that, hey, with Q10's range, we could maybe dictate where the battle goes a little bit better, and at least have something to shoot at the stingers as they're approaching us. And then we did Marku and Meagle, and we played it against the stingers, and the stingers still beat it, sadly. So I think at that point I said, axe grinders are good in many formats, but against the stingers, and they're good in many matchups, but against the stingers, I just don't think so. I just don't think they have it. So after that, we pretty quickly knocked out our axe grinders, and then we started looking to other builds. This was one that I had thought of, and maybe you could play around with the configuration a little bit, maybe 4 squads of Arrogruts and maybe 2 Swag Riders or something. You could play around with it a little bit, but I have been interested in running Arrogruts, Mimring, Swag Riders with old Raylin. I've never done it before, but competitively, I have to think it has some tools. And I'm kind of interested in the ways that you can abuse Mimring's range with this army. But I think I've shared in previous videos that I don't love playing the Arrogruts. It's just not a playstyle I enjoy. It's a lot of figures to manage, a lot of support figures and offense figures. I find it challenging for me to run, but I was thinking maybe it has tools, maybe. So 3 Arrogruts, Raylin, Isamu, Marku, Mimring, and 3 Swag Riders. We did it against the Stingers, and Stingers still won. So again, you know, if you repeat the matchups, maybe once or twice the arrows win, but I wasn't feeling good about it. The Stingers won so comfortably that I just thought, nope, forget it. No Arrogruts. We thought, everyone is thinking about the Stingers right now. If it can't beat the Stingers, we just can't run it. Or at least I can't give it to Alex. So that was my thinking. Another army we tested against, I called this army just the solid brick wall. So I just imagine, hey, you want to run cheese? Fine, it's cheese. Major Q9 and Raylin. They do go up in Renegade points, but not as much as they go up in Delta. So from a certain angle, they're still slightly discounted in this format, right? So Major Q9 and Raylin. Q9 has his defense buffed to 9. I threw in the Krav Maga agents because I always like having Krav Maga with Raylin. That's a great synergy where she buffs their defense and then they get extra likelihood of getting stealth dodge to trigger, and then Marku for the extra filler, and then versus the Stingers. So this, initially, I would say in the first half of this test game I did, Q9 was doing pretty well, and he was just tanking every shot that the Stingers got on him, every single one. It was pretty impressive, and I thought, I think we might have it. Just, yeah, if someone throws a ton of bodies at us through the Stinger spam, we just need to put up a brick wall and hold them. But the problem is, well, anyway, the Stingers won, but here, the reason why they won is because with enough attacks from the Stingers, eventually one will get through. And there was one moment in the game where a single Stinger dropped like 4 skulls. He got a successful drain, dropped 4 skulls, and Q9 whiffed, and he was dead. I think Q9 had 1 or 2 wounds on him by then, but still, he rolled poorly enough that he was gone that entire game. And so it got me thinking, yeah, Q9's amazing, yeah, Raylin's amazing, but if you think about a Stinger, when a Stinger whiffs his defense, what does the opponent lose? He just loses a Stinger. Not a big deal. But if you whiff defense on Q9, you lose Q9, and therefore the game, right? So, or most likely the game, you know, at that point it's most likely over. So, too many points put into 2 few figures for this event, and we just thought, nope, nope. As optimistic as I was about it, it will eventually fall, or it did eventually fall to the stinger spam. So I wasn't feeling great about that. But then we had this army that I was afraid of, both afraid of and I thought maybe has some tools into the stingers. So if we ran 3 green scales, Zelrig, Isamu, and Old Raylin. So Zelrig's defense is buffed to 6 with Raylin. The green scale warriors provide a little screen for Zelrig, but mainly to Z-bomb into the stingers. One of the reasons Zelrig is so frightening for the stingers is because it's a 24 hex start zone, so Zelrig can just fly in and he's got free reign to hit any. The stingers can't escape it. In other words, you can't spread out your figures because you filled out your start zone completely. So this is prime. This is a prime opportunity for Zelrig to fly in and Z-bomb and roast a whole platoon of stingers. And so I tested this, and what I found was, the stingers did narrowly win, but this was a lot closer. Zelrig, I did a best case scenario test. I may have done a worst case scenario test also, but I do remember best case scenario, Zelrig flies in, blasts a bunch of stingers right off the bat before they can even move. And even then, the stingers still turned it around. Even after they suffered enormous losses at the start, they're just too consistent, and it was really painful to see. So I was hoping I had found something here, but no, it wasn't working. And so we were getting a little desperate, and I was starting to worry, like, how do you fight the frickin' stingers? But then I remembered we might have a secret weapon that, you know, I'm not saying no one else has this, but I feel like very few people would. It's a very specific figure that I didn't think people had, or many people had in their collections. Are you ready for it? The secret weapon that I was really excited to drop on this event and see people's reaction to it was the Mezzodemon Spam. I don't want to talk too much about Mezzos here, because Mezzos are one of my favorite units in the entire game. Mechanically, in terms of how I play them, in terms of their strength competitively, everything about them I find fascinating. And they're up there with Torkulna, Grubs, Raylin in terms of like pet armies or pet units. I love the Mezzos quite a bit. Because I've devoted so much time to trying to figure them out and study them and get into the nitty-gritty of them, I think there's a whole video later on for talking about the Mezzos and why I think they're good, and maybe even better than a lot of people think. That's my view. You know, who am I to question the competitive veterans, of course, but just my own 2 cents. I think this is a kind of a deceptively stronger unit than a lot of people give credit for. Why does my group have so many official Mezzodemons? Normally, I'm content with 3D printing. Normally, I'm content with, borrowing from people. But, I just like the Mezzos. I like the demon builds in VC and in Classic. I enjoy them. I like the look of the figures. I think they're gnarly. They got that cool, like, metallic sheen to them. I think they're really cool figures. But my friends and I are official Heroscape collectors. We don't want to have, like, a bajillion common squads of everything. But one thing we do like, we like collecting the little side pieces, like special order markers or special markers. So like for Werewolf Lord, we just want one of everything. We're still getting there. We're pretty close, but we're trying to complete our group collection. We want one of every official classic unit. And so it's very important for us to get the units, like the units that have little markers on them, like Werewolf Lord with his lycanthropy markers. We want to make sure we'll get the Werewolf Lord, we'll get his official card, but we also want to make sure we get at least one set of those glow-in-the-dark lycanthropy markers. Same thing with the Mezzodemons. The Mezzodemons have their exoskeleton markers. Those are collectible items for us, and we want to make sure that we have at least, one set of them. But I like the Mezzos so much. I invested a long time ago in getting a bunch of them, a ton of them. So we actually have 6 official squads of Mezzos with the exoskeleton markers in our group collection. And I've broken them out for tournaments before. I ran, I think, 4 in my first tournament at Card Addiction, which is a store we play at. My first tournament there, I ran 4 squads of Mezzos, Krav Maga, and Agent Carr, and I believe I came in first place. It was very close, but I believe I came in first place. Flex like a douchebag. No, but I'm just saying that these guys are pretty strong, and I've had a lot of success with them, and I have decent experience with them, if I do say so myself. But yeah, anyway, enough ranting about the mezzos. We have a lot of squads of them, and I like the idea of these guys into a common heavy meta. So let's go over the bullet points of their pros and their cons, and why I think this could have been our group's secret weapon. These guys are really good into commons because of their poison cloud, so they get 4 attack at 4 range. I call it the spit. They just spit at common squads with 4 attack, and into most common squads, 4 attack's pretty strong, and if they're on height, that's 5 attack at range. That's pretty strong. You know, a squad of 2, that's 10 dice you throw at the opponent. Not bad. The other big thing I like about them is exoskeleton. It's a great power, but when you have huge numbers of exoskeleton markers, like the more exoskeleton markers that you have, that power seems to, I feel for me, that power goes up exponentially in its return on investment. It is very hard for the opponent to chew through that many exoskeletons. 6 squads of mezzos will produce 12 exoskeleton markers. That's 12 normal attacks that we can just negate, in addition to the 12 actual mezzos we have on the board. And then this is the other point, not related to gameplay, but just kind of a fact of our scene. My thinking was Mezzodemons as a hard to find and pretty expensive, not as expensive as Chasers, God no, but a pretty expensive D&D unit. We expected few people would have official Mezzos to bring to an official tournament, and that Mezzos would therefore be a surprise pick that people wouldn't be expecting or prepared for. So I was kind of thinking, how many people are expecting mezzos to show up, and how many people are preparing for mezzos? That's where I thought, this could really be our secret weapon here. But there are some downsides to the mezzos, no doubt. Mezzos are a 2-figure squad, and that is pretty punishing. Opponents can easily out-activate the mezzos in any 2-figure squad, and the 2 activations you get, therefore, per order marker, become extremely valuable, and the penalty of poor output per activation becomes extremely high. So it is especially important to make sure you're doing some kind of damage when you only have 2 activations per order marker. These guys have no bonding, just 2 attacks, and you have to hope that you do something with those 2 attacks, because if you don't, it hurts. They are vulnerable to special attacks and also, special powers like Grimnack's Chomp. They cannot use their exoskeletons on special attacks or special powers, and mezzos can theoretically lose all of their figures before ever using a single exoskeleton if subjected to special attacks. And then similarly, not quite as bad, but if the opponent kills all but a single mezzodemon before ever triggering exoskeleton, that's really rough, because then you're only left with 1 figure to activate per order marker on the mezzodemons. Even if he's got those exoskeletons, really the sweets, like, it's not such a big deal if you lose, put it to you like this. If you have 12 mezzodemons and you lose 10 mezzodemons before killing the special attackers, let's say you kill the special attacker after you've lost 10 of them. Well, hey, you still have 2 more left. 2 more left, the opponent's down to just normal attackers. You'd be surprised what just 2 mezzodemons with a bunch of exoskeletons will do in a game. So there's actually reason to not be so afraid of losing figures, but the concern comes as you start getting close to, like, oh, I'm down to 2 figures, I'm down to 1 figure, oh no, I've lost all of my mezzodemons and I didn't get to use a single exoskeleton. So there are very specific units that these guys are terrified of. They love fighting commons, and they love fighting normal attackers, but anyone who's got a special power that can wound or destroy, or, they're in trouble. And then, as kind of relatedly, by themselves, they're a pretty poor response to powerful heroes. And it's usually the heroes that boast the special attacks. So a lot of times heroes have high life count and high defense stats. And so 2 attacks of 3 into a unique hero, not great. So the mezzodemons, they need support, but I think they can be a pretty strong core if you give them the right hero killing support. So what kind of support are we going to give them? Well, it turns out if you draft 6 squads of mezzodemons, that leaves you with 110 points left, and I thought, the Airborne Elite, of course. Why did we like the Airborne Elite? I was also thinking maybe you could do Krav Maga and Isamu, but and hey, you every game you'll get your Krav Maga and you'll get your Isamu. You don't have to worry about a D20 roll, whether or not the the airborne elite drop. That's always a risk with them. But my thinking was, if I brought the Krav Maga, then the most number of attacks I could ever get in a single order marker would be 3, which isn't bad, with the Krav Maga. But I thought the Meso-Demons, one of their weaknesses is that low number of activations. It would be nice to have at least one unit of specialists that could activate 4 figures, get 4 different attacks, 4 different move phases, and that's why I thought the airborne just edged out the Krav Maga in that comparison. I just thought, there is the possibility you could at least get one turn with 4 attacks at range. That'll help the Meso-Demons with their poor activation count per order marker. So the airborne elite, the theory was they are going to be the specialists to deal with problem heroes and special attackers. So once the airborne drop, then they go for the danger figure. If there's a Zelrig on the board and the airborne drop, boom, everyone focus fire on Zelrig. Take him out, get rid of him. Do as much damage as you can. And then once Zelrig is out, then it's, green scales or whatever other commons. Basically, Mesos are going to handle everything else besides those special figures or special attackers that the airborne need to assassinate. And so the gameplay thinking was, in most games, use the Meso's exoskeleton survivability to hold out until the airborne get the drop. So, if they get it on round 1, amazing, fantastic, but that's probably not going to happen most of the time. So you have to wait for the airborne to drop, and you're using the survivability of the Mesos to buy yourself that time. So just hold out, The bombers are coming. The paratroopers are coming. Just hold out a little longer. So that was the thinking with the Mesos, that they can last long enough for the airborne to drop. And hopefully by the time the Mesos have cleared through most of the units on the board, when the airborne land, then they can mop up everything else. So that was my theory. And I wanted to test this army against the Stinger spam. Now, this will be a point for that eventual Meso-Demon video that I do want to make at some point. I don't want to talk too much about my specific strategy with the Meso-Demons. There is a particular way that I play them, and it's different than the way I usually play my armies. But I played my specific strategy with the Mesos and the Airborne against the Stinger spam, and the Mesos actually won very comfortably. And then I started thinking, okay, all right, I think we found it, boys. I think we found our secret weapon. So I was starting to feel pretty good about the Mesos, but here's this point here. We were feeling good about this army, at least against the Stingers, but then we needed, before I was to give this to Alex, we had to make sure that it could beat the other threats that we were expecting. So there's people who are going to bring stuff other than Stingers, We have to make sure that this army can fight well into it before I give it to Alex. So another army that I tested it against was the Venok Vipers, the Warlord, and Savaris, an all Ular army, just a swarm of Vipers. I just wanted to see, could the Mesos hold out against that volume of figures, those figures with that level of speed? I just wanted to see how well they did. So I played it out, and the Mesos actually won, at least in that game. I think I only did it once, but it was a comfortable enough win that I felt good about them. The Vipers are scary, no doubt, and I have to say, in that game, if my memory serves, that game with the Mesos versus the Vipers frenzied, about a third of the time, so kind of roughly what you would expect in terms of their frenzy volume, but there's always that risk of a frenzy chain, and just how many exoskeletons could the Venoks burn through with the Mesos, if they frenzied 3 times in a row. So this army it's kind of hard to judge actually how well the Mesos will always do against it because of that variance with frenzy, but you do your best. And at least in this one game where I didn't think there wasn't really any swingy moments in that game, it felt safe to say that the Mesos have a good chance of beating the Vipers. And I remember specifically the Airborne, when they dropped, I had them go after Savaris, because I wanted the opponent to be down to just melee units, having to rush and engage the Mesos, and then the Mesos could use their range to kind of pull the enemy apart. So it worked, at least in that test game, so I was feeling good about that. Then another army that I faced, and this is I just knew someone was going to bring this. And I have to tell you, I am sick and tired of fighting this army. This is Knight Primus Adelburn with the Chasers. We know it's great. It's scary as all heck. and I just knew someone was going to bring it and that we'd have to face it. And I had to make sure that this army, before I gave it to Alex, could do well against it. I tested it, and there's different variations of it. You could maybe do extra chasers and give up Narak and Marku, but this one worked out well in the points, and I thought it made sense. Narak is a good buff to the chasers. The chasers are pretty squishy without him. So anyway, I did all that, and the result? The chasers actually won. And I remember it was a very close game. The chasers won because Marku was there. Marku was left behind at the end game, but I was down to maybe like one mezzo and just Marku. Marku had all his lives, and Marku wasn't a common figure, so the mezzo wasn't able to get his buff into him, and Marku just had the stamina to outlast. And so there's just so many hit points you have to push through in this particular army. So many high attacking squad figures through the chasers. It's just brutal. And yeah, I think I tested it again just to make sure. Oh, well, maybe my mezzos could beat it again, maybe. And I don't think they did. And so then I started feeling a little anxious, like, uh-oh, I would put money on the chasers in Adelburn showing up to this event. And if I know that army is going to do well, and if it's going to do well, Alex is going to have to probably face it if he wants to win this event. So then I started having second doubts about the mezzos. And at that point, yeah. So I started realizing, okay, well, if this is a strong army, these chasers, how are we going to fight it? What else can we do? And so maybe not the mezzos, but maybe something else. So I thought, hey, let's try out the stingers just to gather data. Let's just see. So a spam of stingers, all 8 squads versus the chasers. Result? The stingers actually won. I forget, I had some notes somewhere, but I forget exactly how much the stingers won by, but they did win. And at that point I thought, well, darn, the stingers have seemed to have beaten everything except the mezzos, ironically, that I threw at them. So like the one army that I designed to fight the stingers, fair enough, they don't win against it, but the stingers have been beating everything else. So at that point, we started thinking, should Alex just run the stinger spam? And as I say here, we had intel, quotes, that at least one person was strongly inclined to run Chasers Adelburn, so we wanted at least one army that could beat it. Stingers seem to be testing well into everything except the mezzos, but maybe they could afford one bad matchup and still make top cut. So yeah, okay, my army is mezzo demons. If Alex runs the stinger spam, I'm probably going to run the mezzos. And so if that's really the main matchup he has to worry about, well, then we're good, right? I could just give him the win, So if he ends up facing me, I'll forfeit the game, let him take the win, And the stingers too, they just felt safe. You could never mess up with order marker placement, and they were just a low variance and consistent unit. The other thing too, Alex has a lot of experience running the stingers. He's run them in tournaments, he's run them in our casual games, and he has impressed me with his judgment on when he should drain and when he shouldn't. He generally knows the right time to drain and the right time to hold back with their normal stats. And so I thought, well, this is something Alex is at least comfortable with. And so yeah, the other reason, a couple reasons why the mezzos, might not be the best for Alex. He didn't have any experience with them. And he had seen the figures. He's like, oh, these are cool figures. Like, oh man, and I agree, they are cool. They're very cool. But he doesn't have any experience playing them mechanically. And the mezzos lost to Chasers Adelburn, which we had good reason to believe was going to show. And the other aspect of it too is there's a chance that the Airborne Elite never dropped, and that adds a layer of variance to the army that I'm not sure Alex would have wanted to deal with in a high stakes competitive event like this. If the mezzos don't, if the airborne don't drop, the mezzos are going to have a hard time fighting strong heroes and special attackers, and there's going to be a lot of those at this event. I just had a feeling. And so two other points. I had a little bit more experience with the mezzos Airborne Elite than Alex, and I had a very specific strategy with the mezzos, as I indicated. Very specific strategy with them that I figured I don't think I'll have a lot of time to teach Alex the strategy. Not that it takes a lot of time to learn the strategy, but just this sense of you got to play it a few rounds to really let it sink in. Because I kind of feel that the mezzos are a unit that sort of rewire your Heroscape brain in a lot of ways. Again, this is stuff I all want to talk about in a future video on them. I guess I'll go over the basics of the strategy. The main strategy for me is first, read your matchup. If there are special attackers, then, keep your mezzos away as best you can or deal with them first. But if you're going into all normal attackers, I usually play super aggressively. I charge forward with one squad, just 2 Meso Demons. I try to, and if there, this is also dependent on the map having single hex height. So like maybe the highest point of the map are 2 single hex height spaces. So I rush forward and lock them down with the Mesos, those 2 height spots. And so the opponent is attacking me. I have 4 defense with my exoskeleton, and then I'm spitting down on him with 4 attack if he's unique, 5 attack if he's common. And so I thought, wow, I mean, it's going to be a lot harder for the opponent to burn through exoskeletons. This strategy also means that you burn through exoskeletons to get that one squad you're rushing forward onto the single hex height. Once they're on the single hex height, once they've locked it down, use your exoskeleton, just burn through exoskeletons on that single hex height so that they don't lose that position. It's the idea of increasing dice, through grabbing height spots with them. Now, is that the best strategy with them? As you will see, I'm not sold on that. I am willing to admit a lack of knowledge, lack of experience, and I'm willing to admit that there may be better strategies with the Meso Demons to play them. But that was how I was testing them. That was how I was playing them, and I thought that's a certain strategy that I would like to teach Alex so that he at least knows how to use it. But I just didn't think we would have enough time with the event close approaching. And then also, finally, the Meso Demons and Airborne Elite, it's pretty order marker efficient. Most of your order markers are going to be on the Mesos, but there's still 2 different cards, and that creates the possibility that you could lose turns if you place your order markers poorly. And I think it's just safer to give Alex the Stinger spam. He can never mess up order marker placement, and it's just consistent. So that's what we decided to do. I would take the Meso Demons, and hey man, they're a pet army. I was excited to run them, right? So I was excited to run them, and then Alex would run the 8 Stingers. Of course, as I said earlier, we didn't have 8. We only had 4 squads of them. However, our tournament director, who has the biggest Heroscape collection I think I've ever seen, really nice guy, and will lend out figures to anyone who's attending his events. So I messaged him on Discord. I said, hey, do you have 4 squads of Stingers we could borrow? He's like, yeah, I think I could do that. And I'm like, as soon as I said that, I'm like, I think I probably gave away the army we're running, but hey, we thought it would still be worth it. Even if one person knew the army we'd be bringing, I still thought it would be good for Alex to run this. So with that said, with our army selected, we went to the event, and this was once again at Card Addiction in Anaheim, California. Wonderful store. Brandon is a great manager and a great tournament director, very gracious, and yeah, it's always a pleasure playing with him and playing in that at that venue. So this would be 5 rounds of Swiss, then 3 rounds of Top Cut, single elimination. I believe it was 59 minutes. Most of our games are 59 minutes, I believe, and 20 players. I believe 20 players, which I think at the time was kind of a record for our local scene, at least our kind of resurgent local scene. I'm sure many years ago, before I joined, there were big events that I'd never attended, but this was a pretty good turnout, and therefore a lot of competition, a lot of people to fight, and a lot of possible armies to go up against. So with that, I'll be focusing specifically on how my army did, but with the occasional commentary on how Alex was doing throughout the day. So the first map we played on was Spring Fling by Rainy Days, and so a swamp, ice, and jungle map. And so the army I faced, surprise, surprise, lots of people were running the Stingers, but lots of people, I think there was one other person, I think Leo decided he was also going to run 8 squads of Stingers. So someone else did think that the Stinger spam would be good, but this was, I was facing a Omega Blade, who I've faced in the past before, and he brought a very creative army and a pretty scary army, an army that I grew, my respect for this army went up mid-game when I saw what it was doing. So this is Marku Essenwine, 5 squads of Stingers, and then Taylor, the Kyrie Warrior. So Taylor is buffing all the Stingers, and just scary. And so yeah, I went into this game. Here's the map, and here are my Mesos. I went into this thinking, well, hey, I tested against the Stinger overconfidently. I thought, oh yeah, I tested the Mesos against the Stingers, and the Mesos comfortably beat it. I have nothing to worry about here. There's even less Stingers I have to worry about. Yeah, well, that's because the fewer Stingers were hitting much harder than the Stinger spam. So I mentioned that my strategy is with the Mesos in the past is usually to take 2 Mesos, rush them forward, secure single hex height, and then just drop spit attacks on anyone going against me. But as you can see on this map, there is no single hex height. There's only there's double hex, there's triple hex, but you can see these swamp pieces here, they're all the same level. So even if my mezzos grabbed one of these, you know, this double hex, which I think would have been ideal, even if they did, stingers could just go right here and get rid of any height bonuses that I might obtain. So once I think I initially started, it's been a long time since I played these events, so a lot of the details will escape me, unfortunately. But I think I did try to rush a squad forward and secure height, but the stingers were hitting like trucks with Taylor's aura. It was really, really punishing. I burned through a lot of my exoskeletons really fast, and I think eventually I burned through all of them, and I had to start pulling. One of the problems with my strategy is you invest everything in that one squad that you develop early, and then if that squad goes down or if you lose all your exoskeletons, then you got to redevelop everything from the back line. So it's not a perfect strategy by any means. And the other problem with this game, the airborne were not dropping. Every round they refused to drop, and I was thinking, oh no, like it was looking pretty close. Like I was starting to lose. I was getting down to like 4 or 5 individual mezzo figures, and I was starting to get pretty anxious, like oh geez, do I know, like have I completely misunderstood the mezzo demons? Have I gotten cocky and completely maybe I have. But the good news was, toward the end, the airborne dropped at the very end of the game. Look at this. I think four mezzos, and I had surely burned through all of my exoskeletons, but the airborne dropped, and once they did, we targeted, tailored, and we just gunned everyone else down. So they took their sweet time, but they did eventually drop, and when they did, yeah, they brought the win. So was very grateful for the game, Omega Blade, great army, and I got lucky with that airborne drop toward the very end. Yeah, that was that first win, and was feeling a bit better about the mezzos, feeling like, okay, you know, I think I'm comfortable with this army again. Now, how was Alex doing? Hoo boy, if only I had video footage of Alex's first game this day. He won his first game by 10 freaking points. The game came down to time, and he was down to a single stinger versus his opponent's Isamu. And in classic points, Isamu is only 10, and each stinger is 20. Alex won by 10 points. I think the Isamu army was also very stinger heavy, and you can see here Alex moved his last stinger in to try to kill Isamu. Personally, I think he should have just run. He should have run to the other end of the board and run out the time, just be super safe. But he decided to rush in, and he didn't kill Isamu, but he did win. He did win by 10 points. And I remember watching that game, and initially it looked like Alex was going to lose. It was looking really bad for him. I thought, oh no, this is not how I wanted him to start out the day. Oh, have I set him up for failure giving him this army? I was like, oh no, I can't look. And then he did it. And the look on his face was just of relief and shock and just awe. It was wow. So yeah, this was amazing. So he was doing pretty well. You know, he took his first win, and that sets you up well in the Swiss format. But Day was young. So next map was game 2 was on Ceremony by Shurig. This is a GenCon map, so it'll be in the pool for GenCon, and so it was good to get practice on that. This time I faced, I believe his name is Chris. I'm so sorry, man. If you're watching this video and you recognize this army, I am so sorry if I forgot your name. I forgot the handle, but I thought his name was Chris. So feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But he brought a good army. It was just a contemporary heavy, Festering Honor Guard, Queen Maledrix, Knight Primus, Frostclaws, Isamu. Just some of the best in contemporary right now, all thrown together into a single army. As you can see here, this is a picture I took mid-game. So I realized mid-game, I was like, oh crap, I forgot to document the game. And so I snacked the picture right here. But anyway, let's go ahead and look at the board. Mid-game, like I said, I don't remember a whole lot of the details of the game other than Adelburn rushed up, and I think yeah, so you can see an airborne dropped here. So the airborne did drop early. I don't think they dropped on the first round, but they dropped early, and I think they put a lot of wounds on Adelburn, and eventually the mezzos that had developed did kill Adelburn. There was a lot of action going around here. I forget what glyph that was. It might have been move. I'm not sure. It might have been move, but there was a lot of contention over this area of the board. Maladrix and her honor guard, and look at that paint job too. That was another treat to fighting this army. Just admiring the paint job there. But Maladrix and the honor guard were fighting here. These mezzos were holding their ground with their exoskeleton, but I think eventually Maladrix powered through those mezzos, and then she started running over here. Certainly the airborne died pretty early. I was down to just mezzos. I think I had burned through all my exoskeletons, and at some point I remember Maladrix came down from height. She came down here, and somehow I was able to maneuver a squad of mezzos, I think up here. And so they got 2 height attacks, 2 attacks of 4 down on Maladrix, and that did bring her down, I remember. And I just, it was, yeah, but I do remember that at least. I remember that they jumped up right here, Maladrix was somewhere here, and they spat down on her, and that did kill her. So it was a pretty close game, but I did take the win. So yeah, Chris, if you're watching this, and if I got your name wrong, let me know. But love the paints, and it was a pleasure playing you. So it was 2-0. I forget what Alex's score. I kind of stopped paying attention to how well Alex was doing at that time. But I was happy with 2-0. And then game 3, we went into Adalburn's Abode. This is by Superfrog, also a Gen Con 2025 map using contemporary terrain. And then the army that I faced, it was sort of a throwback, sort of a deja vu, I should say. Not exactly the army that I love, but very, very close. This was a Nagrub army with Raylan the Kyrie Warrior, one of my favorite types of armies in the game, a king build army, and instead of Torkulna as the king, you have Thyraxis Dragoon. So this was by Really Trippin, that's his handle, I believe, and he has really taken to painting. As you can see here, he went all out on his paint job for Thyraxis, and I played him in casual, I played him in competitive, and he's very, very good. So I was facing 6 squads of Nagrubs, Thyraxis, and Raylan, a doozy of an army, a lot of figures to have to chew through. So here was the battle. I do remember. Round 1, and I won initiative, the airborne dropped, and I thought, oh yes, heck yes. Kid in a candy store. So I dropped all the airborne, and I had them immediately go for Raylan. Just take her out. Just get rid of his armor right away. And I think they did. I think they killed her very early with the airborne drop. So I got really lucky on that. But the sheer volume of figures and maddening chitter, the fact that they did drop meant that it was easy for Thyraxis to maddening chitter. So like I think I was down to 1 airborne, and then he got the chitter, and he just moved my next marker to the airborne, and he just crap. Like I would have preferred to, you know, activate the mezzos, but that's what Thyraxis does. It's what he does. And then I remember he got a good number of battle frenzy chains with Thyraxis too. So he ended up doing a lot of damage on his turn with Thyraxis, and he was healing pretty steadily, but I do remember he rushed Thyraxis forward, and there were a lot of grubs left back at start zone. I think I've talked about this before, but one of the issues with running a Nagrub's King build, a lot of times if you run more than 3 or 4 squads of Nagrubs, all those extra Nagrubs, while they're helpful, they're handy to have, it's extra, you know, blood bags for the Hive Lord, a lot of times they just get left at the start zone. And it's just sort of, would you prefer those points be spent elsewhere? But there's a twist. There's a twist coming up. So eventually the mezzos, they took a lot of punishment from Thyraxis, and I think they lost most of their exoskeletons, but they did eventually power through and kill Thyraxis. So it was a couple of mezzos with a couple of exoskeletons left versus a huge brood of Nagrubs. And what ended up happening was the Nagrubs killed a bunch of... The mezzos were holding their ground because it's just a poor defense common figures. The mezzos were eating them for lunch, but they were out activating the mezzos, and they were faster than the mezzos. And eventually they got a couple of lucky kills, killed the mezzos, and brought me down to a single mezzodemon. That mezzodemon still had a lot of exoskeletons, but here's the twist. I suddenly realized he's still got more figures than I do. And there's a Wannick glyph right there. I only have a single figure. So I thought I need to control Wannick immediately. There was some kind of initiative switch that happened that gave him the jump. And then I realized, oh no, I have severely miscalculated. I put my mezzo up on height here, so he was attacked, but Nagrub grabbed the Wannick My Mezzo killed him right after, but then as soon as I only had one attack, he had 3. As soon as that happened, he just put another Nagrub on it. As soon as that happened, just put another Nagrub. I killed, then another Nagrub. Killed, then another Nagrub. And then I realized, I see what he's doing. He has to control Wanek so that by the end of the round, I can't use my exoskeleton on Wanek wounds. And on my last Mezzo, he rolled for Wanek, he got it, and I lost. I felt pretty confident after it was my game to lose at that point. I really should have locked down Wanek and kept him from controlling it, but I didn't appreciate the danger of Wanek until it was too late. So really tripping. Great game. You taught me a lot about how to control Wanek, and I'm grateful for the lesson. So it was a wonderful game, and I was 2-1 at that point. That was my first loss of the day, but there was more to come. So next game was on Embroiled by Ulysses. I believe this might also be a Gen Con map. Don't quote me on that, but it's a very good map. Guess who I was playing for game 4? That's right, I was actually facing Alex. So that meant that Alex was doing, in the Swiss format, he had to have been doing well enough to at least make it this far and face me. So I believe he was still 2-1 at that, which meant he still had a good chance of making top cut if he continued raking in some wins. So yeah, I was facing the Stinger spam on this map, and I remember I was like, okay, well, I pulled the tournament director over. I said, hey, we'll play this game out. Can I just give the win to Alex? Just let him take the win. You know, I don't care what happens in this game. Are you cool with that? And the director was like, yeah, sure, that's fine. So I just said, go ahead, take the win. And so Alex he guaranteed to get that point here, guaranteed to be at least 3-1 on his end. I could take the second hit, whatever, no big deal. So I faced this army. One of the reasons I gave Alex the win was because in the test I did, the Mezzos beat the Stingers. So I thought, this is that matchup that I was afraid Alex was going to run into. So I just said, take the win. And we decided to play it out anyway. So Alex advanced his Stingers. Most of the fighting happened around here, this height perch here. I remember the airborne dropped kind of at an inopportune time. They landed mid-fight, so they were within range of the Stingers. I probably should have put them far away, but I just wanted them. I didn't want the Stingers to be rolling height buffed defense against the airborne, but that's how it rolled. That's how it shook out. And Alex he played his figures pretty carefully. I remember he moved a lot of Stingers off to the sides. My Mezzos were spitting down on them pretty consistently, but he just out activated me, and he killed my my specialists. You can see they're all dead right there. Look at, oh no, maybe they didn't drop at that point, I don't know, but they did die pretty early, I remember. And there's just a lot of fighting right here. I remember I used this ruin right here to hide some Mezzos, and yeah, it was pretty even throughout the whole fight. And then here's the twist. I forget all the details, but Alex beat me. He actually beat me, and I think the reason he beat me was because this is not a map that has single hex height for the highest points. So my strategy of rushing the Mezzos forward didn't work as well on this map, and Alex was able to exploit that to even out the dice rolling and even things out in his favor. So in fact, even though I forfeited the point to Alex, he still legitimately earned it. Even if I hadn't forfeit it, he would have taken the win anyway. So well done, Alex. It was great playing you, and you showed me that, yeah, you can't always rely on test games, and I can't always rely, you may think you have a strategy, but the map you play on, it can challenge that strategy, and that's what I found with a lot of these maps at this particular event. So anyway, well done, Alex. Then game 5, and I believe this was the last of the I forget. I don't know if this was top cut yet, but anyway, it was on Spring Fling by Rainy Days, and I was facing I believe his name is Mr. Sean Guy in our server, and he brought an interesting army. It was Frostclaws, Adelburn, then 3 squads of Stingers, and the Tarn. So the powerful Stingers, the powerful Adelburn, and the Frostclaws, just a solid army all rounded. He had a really cool paint job for his Adelburn. Unfortunately, I don't have any pictures of the game itself mid-game, but I will go ahead and talk about the battle. So we played on Embroiled, and what I remember is the airborne did get, I won initiative and they got the round 1 drop. So I said, we gotta kill Adelburn. Everyone throw your attacks onto Adelburn, because Adelburn and Grimnack are terrifying figures for the Mesodemons because they can just delete. They can delete and destroy my figures before I use any exoskeletons. So really important to kill Adelburn early. I don't think the Airborne killed Adelburn on their first attack, but they severely wounded him, and then Adelburn quickly fell after that. But fighting through the Frost Claws and fighting through the Stingers, it was still a challenge. And also the Tarn, as a unique squad, I don't get my Poison Cloud into them with the Stingers. But in the end, the Stingers and the initial attack from the Airborne early on, that set me ahead, and it just gave me a momentum, and I was able to ride through to victory at the end. So yeah, I took the win there, but I want you to remember this map, because this particular map is frightening for its glyph configuration. Look at these glyphs. Move +2, disengage. If an opponent controls these two glyphs, you are in for a rough time. So this map, remember this will come up again later in this particular event. This was a scary glyph configuration. It didn't come up in this game, but it will come up again before we go to the next event. So anyway, yes, Top Cut begins now. So game 6 was on a map I don't know. So I say, does anyone recognize this map? I tried to look on the map catalog in the Heroscape.org website. I must have missed it. I could not find it. So if you recognize this map and if you know the creator, let me know in the comments. I will credit them in a pinned comment. But in any case, I fought on this map, and I fought Valiant Owl, who I understand is a viewer of the channel. And so I appreciate you, Valiant, for watching the channel and supporting it in the way that you do. And he ran an army of 3 Marten Hounds, Marku Essenwine, Krav Maga, Isamu, and Agent Carr. So the Hounds are just... they're pretty scary, and they're especially scary to me because their Morrow Plague will destroy Mesodemons without me being able to use my exoskeleton. So I was pretty afraid of that. Now, I don't have a lot of pictures of how the game went down, but I think the Airborne did get an early drop, and they were able to... I remember, I forget who I went after first. It may have been Agent Carr, might have been... I probably went for... some of the Marten Hounds because they have 5 defense. It's pretty tough to get through, and I forget exactly how I used them, but they were able to do pretty good damage. They took out a lot of figures, and I remember Valiant Owl got unlucky with some of his defense rolls on the Krav Maga, so unfortunately Stealth Dodge didn't trigger when it probably should have. And once the Krav Maga were eliminated, the Mesos did a fairly good job cleaning up the Marten Hounds, because the Marten are common and the Mesos get their buff into it. I also remember too that Valiant Owl was pretty unlucky with some of his wild pack movement rolls for the Hounds, so the Hounds were often stuck at 3 or 4 move. And I remember they didn't get very far out of the start zone just because bad rolls on the D20. So I did end up winning this, but Valiant Owl, it was a pleasure playing you. I think it's a really cool army that you brought, and yeah, I had a good time fighting you. So yeah, but if anyone does recognize this map, let me know, and I will mention it in the comments. And then we got to game 7. Remember I said that this map would come up again? Well, here it is again. This is actually the same picture I used earlier, because I don't have any evidence of this battle other than memory. I don't have pictures of how the battle went down, but here it is. This is the army I was terrified of, just terrified of, and this is the one that I lost to in practice. So 5 squads of Death Chasers, 1 Drow Chain Fighter, interestingly, but Knight Primus and Narak. Narak the Glacian Swag Rider on a ice-heavy map. An ice-heavy map, and the map that had that scary glyph configuration. As soon as I saw this matchup, as soon as I saw this map, I thought, it's over. I can't win. I cannot win. Now, I should say here, at this point, Alex, I don't think made it to Top Cut, or I think he made it to Top Cut, but he got knocked out facing someone else. So, unfortunately, Alex had lost his own personal chance at the Goldawashia, but I was still in it, and I wanted to get it for him. But looking at this army and looking at this map, I thought, well, crap. How do you fight this? Narak's going to get his snow buff? How on earth do you fight this? One of the things that's difficult about fighting the Death Chasers with the Airborne Elite, even if the Airborne drop on round 1, if you place, it's still incredibly risky to move the airborne on round one, or put your order marker 1 round 1 on the airborne if they drop, because the death chasers get their charge. So they might start all the way back here, but the chasers then automatically develop right about here. So if you plop your airborne somewhere here, I guess maybe you could math it out and keep them far away, but it's kind of hard to keep them far from those chasers. The risk is if you lose initiative, you put your order marker 1 on the airborne and you lose initiative, those chasers are very probably going to rush out and engage at least 1 or 2 airborne, and then your airborne really are not getting any much value at all for the rest of the game once those chasers engage him, because 4 attack into 2 defense, those chasers are likely to kill 3 in a single turn. So just terrifying. Now the good news was, well, I guess it was good news. I guess it ended up being advantageous. My airborne did not drop on round 1. So actually, come to think of it, that's nothing but bad. That's not bad. That's all bad for this matchup here. I decided I'll fight it out. Of course, I'll fight it out. But oh my god, do I remember this game. So the chasers rush forward. And Adelburn starts moving up. Narak starts moving up. And then I move up my mesos, and I just say, all right, lock down a position and see what I can do. See what I can do. Because I know Adelburn's coming in, and he is just going to delete mesos all over. What am I thinking? You ever hear that expression, strategy is for amateurs? But what's the expression? Amateurs talk about strategy, professionals talk about logistics. So, not saying I'm a professional, but the thinking here was, I want to still grab height. I want to take away height from my opponent. My opponent is an all melee army, so if the opponent has to engage me in melee, I'd like him to be fighting an uphill battle, so to speak. So what I wanted to do is, knowing that Adelburn is going to be deleting Mesodemons, I wanted to keep Mesodemons close by this perch right here. So as soon as one's deleted, you can just move him up to replace. Move him up to replace. I tried to do that. I wasn't always perfect in my placement, but that was a goal of mine. So mid-game, the chasers were spread out across the map. Narak was on his snow, and I mean, it was pandemonium in the center of the board. Then the airborne decided to drop, and I thought, oh, you gotta be kidding me. Right now you drop, man? Come on. And anyway, so the airborne died very swiftly. I tried to place them nearby and, keep them out of range of the chasers. It was impossible. There was always one chaser nearby to engage. I think I got maybe 1 turn of 3 attacks, which was okay. That killed a couple chasers. It put a couple wounds on Narak, but it was brutal. But the game was still going. I was not losing yet. One thing I remember is I put my last airborne was right on this little hex right here, if you can see that, and I had 2 mesos here holding it. Narak had engaged. He was on his snow. I think Primus was walking around nearby, and a bunch of chasers. And what I do remember is my opponent, and this was Andy. I was playing Andy, Leo's brother, as I understand, and Andy had some pretty unfortunate rolls, some bad rolls fighting up on my mesos. So I was getting lucky in terms of the poor attack that Andy was throwing at me, and I was holding my ground surprisingly well. At some point, I did kill Narak, and then that dropped all of the armor of the chasers. So that, I mean, I was like, oh my word, how am I still in this? What was funny is that one airborne that had dropped right here, Andy never went for him because it was the last airborne. Andy, I don't think incorrectly, thought I need to go for his Mesodemons because that's the main threat right now. That one airborne, what's he gonna do? That's one attack per turn. I need to be killing off his mesos, and so that's what he went for. So it resulted in this really funny situation where there's this one airborne right here. And there was all this carnage going on around him, every single hex around this one space right here. I just imagine the airborne like clutching his rifle and just looking like, oh my word, like he's caught in this tornado of bodies and swords and slashing and blood and guts everywhere, and he's just standing still, hoping no one notices him. And no one did notice him. Everyone was fighting everyone else. So this one airborne was just hanging in there. I don't remember a lot of the rest of the game. Primus did eventually die. Somehow I just burned through his life count, but I was down to 1 meso and that last airborne. But with those 2, and I didn't activate the airborne was just sitting there, but with my last meso, I think I killed the final death chaser. And I was like, how am I still in this game? Oh my, how am I still in this? He still had a Drow chain fighter, and if the chain fighter got lucky with Hide in Darkness, then it would be tough. But I thought, wait a minute, the Drow chain fighter is at his start zone. I still have my airborne. I still have one figure with 8 range left. So because this airborne was dodging all of the aggro around him, no one went for him, and that ended up paying off for me in the end. I moved him just a little bit out. I maybe moved him right here. He took a shot at the Drow chain fighter, and he got it. He got it. I think I'm pretty sure I won that game with no exoskeletons, a single Mesodemon, and a single airborne elite. That was it. It was heart-poundingly intense. And Andy, if you are watching this, I just thank you for that game. Thank you. It was something to see. So yeah, with that, I advanced to the championship game, and I thought, oh my word, I could still win Alex a Goldwashia. And I thought, well, maybe I've got a chance. I've been given this opportunity, and I was like, okay, all right, let's see what I'm facing. You know what I was facing? Another Death Chaser army with Adalburn. You see why I'm sick of fighting these guys? Everyone brings them. I get, no hate. It's a good army, whatever. But I'm so sick of it. But it wasn't the exact army that I fought last time. So this was Roxanne, or Risklal in our server. And she tweaked the army a little bit. So instead of Nerak, she just swapped it out with Miberxa. Another good pick for sure. And so I decided, I played it out. I said, all right, this is it. I can either win Alex the Goldwashia or I can't. This is the moment of truth. And it was a different map, the one map I don't recognize. We fought it out. I don't remember a great deal of the details of the game, I have to say. So Roxanne moved her chasers all the way up with the charge and got Adalburn coming in. And Alex was watching by, glued to the game. Miberxa stayed back. And the airborne did not drop for the first, I think, 2 rounds. So it took them a while to drop for the first 2 rounds. I had to just rely on my mesos for a while. And the mesos were burning through the chasers. The chasers didn't have any defense bonus from Nerak. I remember mid-game, the airborne did drop. But by that point, the chasers were once again spread out all across the map. So I thought, there's really nowhere safe for the airborne to drop. And then I realized, wait a minute. I will have the airborne drop in Roxanne's start zone, right here, because the chasers have already moved away from Miberxa, and I thought, okay, well, if I can't drop the airborne anywhere safe, let me at least drop them in the back line so that they can gun down Miberxa. I would like to reduce the opponent to all melee figures. Miberxa will be a terror to fight in the endgame. So that's what I did. The airborne landed, and they quickly killed Miberxa, and I thought, you know what? Not the worst outcome. But there were enough chasers close to the start zone that as soon as that happened, chasers rushed in and began killing airborne all over. The real decisive moment in the game was as Adalburn started moving up through this corridor here. I tried to put my Mesodemons up here. I began realizing I need to make sure that the most figures that Adalburn can engage in a single turn is 1, because then he just deletes it, but he doesn't get his normal attack of 5. Don't let him engage 2 of your Mesodemons in a single move. That would be dangerous. But I think I had to have messed up somewhere, because and I think what happened is I was just afraid of Adalburn. I was just psyched out after that last game. I just said, I don't want to deal with him right now. Let me go for chasers so that I know, ensure I can make some progress. I have to kill chasers. I know I can kill chasers, and I'll deal with Adalburn later. No, that was a terrible mistake. I don't know why I did it. Because Adalburn just came to the start zone and he just started deleting. And even though I tried to space out my figures, every turn just an automatic kill on my mesos. It was painful. And eventually, unfortunately, the game came down to some fighting here. I got down to my last meso, and sadly, I lost. I misplayed. I should have been more aggressive fighting Adalburn. For whatever reason, I wasn't. And I lost. So, in the end, that was that. Oh, I have this slide here to talk about the game, but there you go. So, unfortunately, I'm sorry, Alex. I fought for you, buddy. I tried. But second place was still a good showing, and I was happy to come in second out of 20 people. That's a great day in Heroscape as far as I'm concerned. So that was a good showing. But in any case, let's go over the top 4 people, the top 4 armies of this event. So my final score was 5-3 win-loss. Not my best performance, but a decent score nonetheless. I'm reasonably happy with it. First place was Roxanne with her 5 squads of chasers, Adalburn, and me Berksa. Second place, yours truly, with Airborne and 6 squads of Mezzodemons. So yeah, the fact that Mezzos carried me to second place, I was like, yeah, I'm glad I ran them. They did well, and I still regard them pretty highly after this event. Third place was Andy with his Death Chasers ×5, Drow, Chainfighter, Adalburn, and Narak the Glacian Swogrider. And again, Andy, I will never forget that game as long as I live. That was one hell of a brawl. And then fourth place was, oh yes, this was an army I never faced, and I'm glad I never faced it, frankly. But I had seen it that day, and this was Ella or Oscar, however you prefer to be referred to. I remember Alex and I got lunch before Top Cut, and we had seen this army before we went to lunch. And I remember telling him, like, yeah, brother, I have no idea how we're going to fight that. I hope to God we don't have to face that army. It was Raylin, 6 Morrow drones, and Leviatech. So imagine the drones buffed to 7 move. They'll get rerolls with Leviatech, and everyone drops 1 defense with Raylin. Scary army, very clever army. It is no surprise it did this well that day. So yeah, that was top 4. And so, yeah, now we talk, as we usually do, about the takeaways from the event. Every time you go to Heroscape, you learn more about the game. So my usual strategy with the Mezzos, the one I had alluded to earlier, of using exoskeletons to tank damage until I secure single hex height perches with at least 1 squad of Mezzos, only really works on maps that offer single hex height, and only against units that don't outrange the Mezzos. That's the other thing too. If you have a figure like the Airborne Elite, if you're fighting them, they can pull you off of height, you know, and force you to go somewhere where they can get even level on you. So, you know, it's a situational strategy at best. I do like it. I like to play kind of aggressively with the Mezzos, but it's not always the best to do that. So when running Mezzo spam, no matter how appealing other targets may be, you must prioritize killing any special attackers and auto deleters, so like Grimnack or Adalburn. It's rarely a good idea to run from them and postpone the inevitable. You have to face them, and you have to throw everything you've got at them to take them out. Yeah, for whatever reason in that final game, I just said, I'll deal with Adalburn later. I want to get the number, maybe I just wanted to get the number of attacks down. Maybe I just wanted to isolate Adalburn. But by the time I would have isolated him, he'd still have plenty of lives, and I'd only be down to a couple of Mezzos, and he just loves that. So totally misplayed there, but you know, you learn, live and learn, right? And then Mezzos, and this is the final point, and we'll discuss this more in a future video. Mezzos can be a deceptively strong unit, that's my opinion. Their 2-figure squad size is a major downside, but Poison Cloud and Exoskeleton help them stay competitive. What you sacrifice in activations, you make up for in common killing power, and I think this is their sweet sauce. This is kind of the key to understanding them, at least from my experience. You get the flexibility to spread out how your army takes damage. Again, there's a whole essay I could do on the ways I play the Mezzos and the kind of decisions you have to make. I feel it kind of rewires your Heroscape brain a little bit how to play them, but I love them, and they're great fun to play, and I think they are they're like A-, so they're certainly well regarded. Can make a case that they're even better than that, but maybe that's a hard case to make as they're only a 2-figure squad. But I hold them personally in very high regard. I do like them quite a bit. So anyway, that was all for this event. That was the last Store Championship. So unfortunately, wasn't able to get it for Alex, but he fought hard, I fought hard, and like I said, you know, Alex, he will tongue-in-cheek playfully pretend to be sweaty, but he really isn't. He's a good sport, and he's everyone who plays him enjoys playing him. So yeah. Alex, if you're watching this, thank you for coming, and sorry I couldn't get you the win, but I hope you enjoyed it nevertheless. So anyway, that was this event, and we will move on to the last event I attended before Gen Con. Okay, and the last event I would attend before Gen Con was held on July 19th, also at Card Addiction. This is an event or format called Brawl. It's an unusual, it's a tweak on a melee only format, but I'll go into it here. So the unit pool was expanded. at long last, a format that allows for VC. Oh, hallelujah. We can bring VC again. Hooray. I don't know why, but I guess I know why, but there is kind of an anti-VC faction. I don't want to, not faction. We're all friends. You know what I mean? There's a group that are kind of anti-VC in our Heroscape group in our local scene. And I guess I understand why. They don't like, the VC units, or they don't like having to contend with that VC pool, whatever. But every now and then they'll throw us VC fans a bone and say, okay, fine, we'll host a VC event. So this was not a store championship. This is just kind of a casual local event. Although Card Addiction is now doing the Heroscape League. So it's a new thing that Brandon's testing out, but it's kind of a way to track the individual players' progress through at events that happen at Card Addiction specifically. So it's interesting, and this was the first event in that format. So the unit pool included Classic, D&D, VC, and Renegade units up through Boiling Tension. So that I think you can use the crabs if you wanted to. That wave of figures, if you have them, you can use them. But there are some figures you can't use. There were banned figures. These were the Death Reavers, the Fire Elementals. Understandably, it's going to be a pretty strong unit for a melee-only format, and then Warriors of Ashra, also super strong in a melee-only format. 400 points, I don't believe that is correct. That's a typo on my end, but that should be 450. 450 points in Renegade point, or no, yeah, I just forgot to edit that line, apologies, but that should actually be 450 VC Delta. So not only was it VC, but we're back to Delta. Again, as I say, hallelujah. Hallelujah. We're back, baby. So the figure limit was 18 figures, 24 hexes, and then the special rules of the Brawl format. Figures can only attack or target adjacent figures with attacks or special powers. That is, any power that has the potential to wound or destroy can only target adjacent figures. So it's an interesting tweak on melee-only figures. Melee-only format, it's sort of like, oh, as long as the figure has 1 for his range, then we're good. But like a Major J15, he's a melee Soulborg in that he only has range of 1, but he does have a range for special attack. So, yeah, so this is an important clarification. And so effectively it's melee only, but it also, means that you can only target adjacent figures with damage dealing powers and attacks. So I thought that was kind of cool. Now I have to say, the bad news about this event is it was kind of a dud. Not from an organizing standpoint. Brandon did a phenomenal job, and I'm sure it was a great time for everyone else who attended, but it was a dud in terms of my performance. I made a very stupid mistake going into this event. I could have easily avoided it and could easily have done better, but I made a mistake. I didn't read our format carefully enough, and I mistakenly thought that the figure limit was also 24. I think I just saw 24 hexes and assumed, oh, okay, 24 figures, cool. I could run something spammy. But no, it's 18 figures, and that would come back to bite me. So let's go ahead and we'll cover the theory crafting, but it didn't end up mattering a whole lot because I had to rebuild my army on the fly when I arrived at the event and realized, oh crap, the army I brought is technically illegal. Oh boy, I gotta whip something up fast. So anyway, we'll get to all that, but we'll cover the usual theory crafting as always, because despite the army that I did eventually bring, there were several others I was considering that would have been legal, ironically. Ironically, the one army I went with was the one army that would not have been legal. All these other ones would have been great. So one of the first armies I considered was good old Kurok and the Elementals. So yes, the Fire Elementals were banned. However, in VC Delta, a huge group of Earth Elementals seemed pretty strong. 4/4 attack, defense, very good. And then support it with a couple Air Elementals. You can get a very clean 450 points in VC Delta with 4 Air Elementals, 10 Earth Elementals, and Kurok. What are the strengths of this build? Kurok is far easier to protect in a melee-only event, so no one can snipe him. I think the main thing you have to worry about are figures with like Ghost Walk or Disengage, who can, you could build up a screen of Earth Elementals to protect Kurok. There are a couple figures that can just dance their way or ghost their way through a protective screen, but really other than those figures, you're generally pretty safe with Kurok, and there's no Airborne Elite that can drop and just gun him down. So Kurok is very strong for this format, no doubt. Air Elemental Interdiction, as I hope I showed in that earlier video, where I ran 5 Air... I can't talk. Where I ran 5 Air Elementals. Air Elemental Interdiction is extremely valuable in melee only, will help you get the jump on approaching small and medium figures. So it's just so effective to be able to say, no, you're stopped, you're frozen right there, and now if you want to move, you have to wait until your next turn. And in order to get to your next turn, you have to wait for me to take one more of my turns. That's one more turn where I'm getting it's a turn, an order marker, I get the jump on you. So air elementals seem like a great pick for the earth elementals. And I really do think air elementals are also a deceptively strong elemental unit. Earth elementals additionally have a special attack to bypass Counterstrike. So since this is a melee only event, I just felt, yeah, someone's going to bring Samurai, someone's going to bring Char's Greenscales. We're going to have to contend with Counterstrike, so it's good to have a special attack that will not trigger Counterstrike. So that was also an advantage too. This army is very order marker efficient. As long as Karak is still alive, you just throw all your order markers on him and you can run your entire army. That's a great advantage too. And icing on the cake, figure revival. Karak can bring back figures on certain terms if he gets some breathing room to do so. So all in all, this seemed like a super strong army, and I think if someone ran it, it probably would have done well. Spoiler, no one ran this specific build. What's the major con for me personally? No VC. This is like I want to run a VC army, or army that has at least one VC unit. Because like it's so rare that my group lets us run VC units. I want to be able to run a VC unit in one of our VC allowed events. So even though this army's strong, and even though I have experience with air elementals, Karak, and earth elemental, I was like, no, I don't want to run it. I want to run a VC army. You know, I think I talked about my 5 points of army building for, you know, casual events, and vibes is an important factor. It's, you know, and vibes, part of vibes is like, I'm vibing with VC. I want to bring something VC. And then another point was also to, everyone said like, oh, you're going to run your freaking Karak elementals, aren't you? And I was like, I'm thinking about it. But then I thought, you know what? People are sick of me running elementals. I think I've run them at least 3 times in our local events, and people are sick of me. They're good, man, but like, you know, I don't want to be that guy. I want to change up what I run from now and then, you know, now and again. So yeah, for those reasons, I decided no VC. It's an army I've played many times before. Go ahead, scrap it. Yeah, so didn't end up going with it. There was another army. Now this was an army that I nearly went with, and man, do I wish I did, because it would have been legal. It was all VC, and I thought, man, this would have been strong for melee only. So this was Exentia. I always say Exentia, but Exentia Hoplitron. So 9 Hoplotrons and the big Firebird, the Phoenix. So what's great about this army? Well, it's a very sturdy core with the Hoplotrons. Yes, it's a low figure activation potential, because the max number of activation you get per turn is the Hoplotrons, which is only 2. It's not great, but again, with figures that sturdy and with 4 base attack, it's still very solid. It's a good response to most commons that could show, because a lot of commons are going to really struggle to get through 6 defense. It's just a lot of dice you're rolling to protect you in attacks. So I just like them from a stat line perspective. Shield push is certainly cool. I don't mention it here, but the ability to potentially move a figure down below you and get them off of even level, that's a great advantage too. And then moving on to Exentia, her immolation power would be highly effective in melee only, as everyone attacking her would have to engage and risk getting auto-wounded on her first 6 lives. So as you know, she has 6 lives here, but then once she exhausts all those 6 lives, she explodes, she revives all of her lives, and then she loses her immolation power and Phoenix Rising. But during those 6 lives, she's burning away as a Phoenix, and so anyone that's nearby her gets injured. Now, she also has her Phoenix Rising explosion ability. So once she exhausts those first 6 lives, then she rolls for, it's like 7 or higher. It's a really low roll to get these auto wounds from the explosion. The explosion is 2 spaces away from Exentia. So in the Brawl format, you can still run Exentia. She's not banned, but it means that the explosion can only affect people directly adjacent to her. But most people are going to be adjacent to her if they're attacking her. So I thought that would also have good potential too. And anything that auto wounds, it will bypass high defense and Counterstrike and a lot of other defensive powers. So Exentia just seemed really strong, and the Hoplotrons seemed great. I should have run this army, but I didn't, and we'll get to why. So this was one I was strongly considering. Here's another super experimental army. I didn't run it, but I had fun theory crafting around it. I'm calling it the Ranjit Stew. So people familiar with VC will know there's a unit called Ranjit Singh. And I believe he's actually a historical figure from Indian history. I'm not an expert on that, but I quickly looked it up, and I think that's kind of the historical Ranjit is an inspiration for some of the powers on the card. But in any case, one of my favorite figures from VC, I actually came in second place at a uniques only VC Delta event using Ranjit and Rygarn. And the reason for it, I won't get into it all here, but the Lion of Punjab ability works really well with Rygarn's order marker movement. Rygarn can move one order marker per round, and he and Rygarn are like best pals. Like they get along so well together in an army. So I have experience playing Ranjit with Rygarn, and I did pretty well in that uniques only. But here in this format, Rygarn has range, and I thought Rygarn's 100 points in VC Delta. I don't know if I want to pay 100 points for a figure that can't use his range. So I was thinking, what if I just did Ranjit, right? What if I just do him and then a bunch of unique units, because Ranjit wants to be in an army full of uniques. So this would have been Elite Onyx Vipers, Festering Honor Guard, Isamu, Queen Maladrix, Ranjit, and the Tarn Viking Warriors. A huge hodgepodge of figures, the stew I'm calling it. So let's talk about Lion of Punjab. So why would this army be strong, or theoretically, why did I think it'd be strong? Lion of Punjab confers a very powerful buff, and most units in this build can reap huge returns from it in a single order marker. So Elite Onyx Vipers, they'll be buffed to 8 move 4 attack with frenzy potential. So if they keep chaining their frenzy, they maintain the Lion of Punjab buff in one order marker if they just keep frenzying in that single order marker. And I thought, wow, that looks kind of cool. Festering Honor Guard and Maladrix, check this out. The Festering Honor Guard get buffed to 7 move and 3 attack. So they're hitting at 3 attack even without Motherless Rage. I thought that was really cool. 3 attack as a 5-figure squad, and then they're going to bond with Maladrix, who herself is buffed to 7 move, 5 attack with double attack. All that is happening in a single order marker with Ranjit's buff. Together, this combo can throw 25 dice at an opponent in a single order marker. Think about that, 25 dice. That's more than the bees throw when they're activating 6 bees, right, with their special. And that's all before height buffs or glyph buffs. So honestly, this was the real thing that I was like, wow, this with Ranjit, holy crap. Oh man. Anyway, and then there were the Tarn to round out the extra 50 points that I had, or 45, whatever there are in VC Delta. But they would be buffed to 5 move 4 attack with their charge potential. So let's, like the Vipers, if they keep chaining their charge, every time they charge, they get to move 5 spaces. It's pretty cool. What's the big problem with this army? Well, anyone who's played Ranjit knows that it is woefully order marker inefficient. It's inefficient even with Rygarn, but especially without Rygarn. Whoop, that was a loud motorcycle. Okay, but even without Rygarn, even with Rygarn, it is really inefficient. But without Rygarn, it is one of the worst order marker, one of the worst armies in terms of order marker efficiency. Like, just to get that buff, it just forces you into inefficient order marker placement. You don't always have to go for it, you don't have to always go for it, but you always feel like I should be doing it. I should be going for that buff most of the time since I have it. But in any case, like I said, Rygarn felt like a bad use of points if I couldn't use his range, so he was excluded from the build. So this is one army I was thinking of, but it was not the army that I, quote, decided on. The army that I was really vibing with, if it was legal, that is, ants! The fire ants from VC. Another one of my pet VC units. One of my favorite VC units. I love them to death. Something about bugs. I love VC bugs. I love the bees, and I love the fire ants. And I remember I got these guys when they were fairly accessible and cheap. They're just like little rubber terrarium ants that you can use to decorate like a little like a terrarium, like a little garden or whatever you want to do with them. But they're just these little ant figurines, and I got a bunch of them, got little bases for them, and I think I have 5 squads of them. And ants are an army that you want to be, are a unit that you want to be running in huge numbers. almost your entire army is going to be ants the way they play, or at least that's how I feel. And then adding in Raylin just to buff them, Swarm of the Mara Raylin specifically, just to buff them to 3 defense so they're not dying to everything. And then that would leave me with, I think, 75 points, and I would decide to throw in the Greater Ice Elemental, which is a really strong pick, I think, for the melee-only format because of his ice spikes. So he can't be sniped down from range. Everyone who has to engage him has to trigger ice spikes, which is really cool. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about this. So the fire ants are much more viable in a melee-only format where they can't be picked off from afar. So you see that 2 defense there? That's brutal. And you want these guys in huge numbers, and you want to preserve those numbers because their numbers affect how they use their swarm sting ability, which is a strange power, the way it forces you to position your figures, but it's effective a lot of the time. The ants are a 6-move, 4-figure squad, and they have the swarming ability, and altogether, all 3 of those items, all 3 of those things on their card, afford them a lot of development options. They can move 4 figures, and then let's say you have 8 ants engaged, then you can develop 8 more ants. You can move 8 more ants 3 spaces in that one order marker. So you are really capable of ferrying a great number of ants as they get into the fight. And also too, they can use the swarm ability to move themselves kind of passively onto glyphs as needed. If one is 3 spaces away from a glyph, you can just swarm him onto the glyph. Really cool. Their swarm sting power, it's kind of like Sujoa's sting ability, or Estevara's sting ability, where if they get they can chain, they can keep rolling for sting damage based on a d20. Sujoa, you have to initially do a single wound of damage with her special attack, and whatever gender Sujoa is, but with his special attack, you have to do an initial wound of damage, and then you get to roll for the d20, and you can chain that. Sujoa can pull off some wild things with that ability, but Sujoa first has to get that initial wound of damage. That's not the case with the ants. They just roll the d20, so you either get it or you don't. If you do get it, you can continue rolling for it, so you can keep chaining it. Now, the roll for it is 18, which does seem pretty high, but if you spread out your ants across the board, every figure adjacent to an ant you rolled a d20 for, and if you're rolling the d20 like 5 times in a single order marker, sooner or later you'll get a decent hit, on 1 or 2 figures with the ants. And you can buff that 18. Technically, that 18 really is 17, because in order to do it, you have to have 1 ant engaged to the target. Anyway, there's a whole conversation about how the ants play, but basically the more ants are engaged to a single target, the more you get to buff the roll threshold on that, and it's really fun. It will suffer into certain armies, but especially in melee only, these guys look like they looked like a ton of fun. Why couldn't I use them? Because to use this army, and I really didn't want to run the ants in any less than 5 squads, because you just need those numbers to buff up your sting chances. Oh, and I forgot to mention, Greater Ice Elemental, it's strong in this format because opponents must engage it to kill, and they'll therefore trigger ice spikes. We kind of talked about that earlier, but 5 squads of ants, that's 20 figures right there, and then Ice Elemental Raylin, 22 figures. Had I caught this, I would have gotten rid of this army entirely and just gone with Exentia and Hoplotrons, but I didn't. For whatever reason, I thought I just really wanted to run them in a tournament. I just really wanted to run them. They sounded so fun, and I've never had a chance to run them, and I was so happy that I got these little figures. I was just so excited. I was like, this is it. This is finally the chance I have to run my ants. But nope, they were illegal. But in any case, I didn't realize that until the day of the event. And so I was thinking, well, I've got all these different armies. I think I'm going to hide this army. I'm going to keep this army secret. This will be my secret army, but I'll let other people know some of the other armies I'm thinking about, right? Well, didn't turn out too well. Didn't turn out too well for me at all. But let's go ahead and talk about some of the practice I did. So I actually, Tyler, also known as Comedy Viking in our Discord, he was at the Paradise store championship I talked about in a previous video. So he's a great player. He's a pleasure to play with, and I have a lot of fun with him. And he often attends our casual Thursday nights at Paradise, where we do just casual games, playing whatever format we want, no pressure. And so I've had a lot of casual experience playing with Tyler. But he was going to this event, and he wanted to practice this format with the army that he was running. I said, sure, I'll practice it. I said, I did tell him about this army, and I guess he did it. He wasn't thinking about the figure count either. He was like, oh yeah, those ants sound really cool. I was like, yeah, I'm pretty proud of it myself, thank you. He shouldn't have been. I shouldn't have been. It was a stupid army to pick for this. But in any case, Tyler brought his army. So yeah, I ran a couple of my practice armies besides the ants. I didn't run the ants. So first I ran Exentia and Hoplotrons against Tyler, and he brought Talonghoul. This was the army he had locked in. He wanted to run this army. Talonghoul was interesting. I had thought about Talonghoul personally, but Talonghoul was another case of, well, part of Talonghoul's points are the fact that he has range. If he can't use his range, is that the best use of whatever his point count is in VC Delta? But the fact is, he can still activate 2 massive greater construct units. So maybe he would still be worth his points in the end. Anyway, I thought it was a lot of motorcycles today. Wow. But I thought it would still be a pretty strong army, and so I fought Tyler with it. So he brought Boreos, Greater Ice Elemental, and 1 Iron Golem with Talonghoul. We fought, and Exentia Hops did win, and they did win pretty comfortably. So it was at that point that I thought, maybe I should run Exentia. Maybe I should. I don't know. I do remember that game too. Tyler did not have great rolls for his ice spikes. They probably should have triggered more often than they did. But in any case, I was starting to feel kind of good about Exentia and Hops. But I just wanted to run my ants. I was just so married to them with just, I don't know. I like them. I like them so much. But anyway, I should have gone with Exentia Hoplotrons, but I didn't. And then I tested the Ranjit army against Tyler. And again, this was by far the most theoretical. I just kind of wanted to run it in practice to see how well it would do. Answer, not well at all. While certainly Queen Maledrix is capable of incredible offense with Lion of Punjab, it just hurts when you have to spread out your order markers like that, and not having Rygarn to flex your order marker. You do order marker flexibility to move around Lion of Punjab or activate it when you need to and deactivate it when you don't. It's rough. So yeah, Tyler won that pretty clearly, and once that happened, I thought, yep, definitely not running this. So at that point, the night before, it was either between Exentia Hops or my ants build. I didn't run the ants, like I said, I didn't bring it to this practice night, but I should have caught it. In any case, that was the practice I did with Tyler, and so my final decision, what I thought I'd run, was the Greater Ice Elemental ×1, Raylin, and my Ant Swarm. What did I actually run? So I did play in this event, even though this army here wasn't legal. I had to come up with a different army on the spot. What did I actually run? Well, we'll get to that. So anyway, game day, back to Card Addiction, and it was, again, I believe 5 rounds of Swiss, then 3 rounds of Top Cut, single elimination, 59-minute games, probably. Again, that's usually what I remember us as our time limit for most events. And then 21 players this time, or at least about that. So a similar turnout to the previous event. So what did I end up running? Well, actually, there were a couple people going to this event who are also planning to go to Gen Con. So we've fashioned ourselves Team SoCal. You know, we've got matching T-shirts and all that. So we're having a good time practicing with each other for Gen Con. So I said, hey guys, if you guys are not too burnt out after this event, I'll bring my contemporary figures and we can grill some Gen Con games together. And so they all said, yeah, sure, we'll do that. So I actually, for the purpose of Gen Con practice, I brought my entire contemporary collection in one box. I brought it all to this event with me, along with my Ants army. So when I got to the event, it was quickly pointed out, yeah, you can't run that because it's 22 figures and the figure limit is 18. And I thought, how stupid am I? And so I played around. I tried to see, maybe could I run 4 squads of ants? Nah, just at that point, if you're down a squad of ants, it doesn't make any sense to run them at all. So I didn't even end up running them, period. And what did I actually go with? I realized at that point I had to look through my contemporary collection that I brought with me for Gen Con practice. and it was kind of boring. But I went with I didn't do bears. I didn't run the bears. Let the record state that I did not run bears when push came to shove. I did not run the bears. It's just my pet peeve. I don't run the bears. But I did run Queen Maladrix, Festering Honor Guard, just about as strong as the bears. And then I also did the Bug Ball. I did Oathbound Legionnaires and the Phalanx. And I was debating between running Age of Annihilation Raylin or Swarm of the Mara Raylin, which I did have in my box. I thought, do I want to add defense to my army or be more aggressive and weaken the armor of my opponent? I eventually decided I wanted to be more aggressive and use Raylin's second newest Raylin's debuff instead of the defense buff. And so that was the army I picked. Was it the best army for this format? Probably not, but it's all I had. I was like, hey, I drove all the way out here. Might as well play it. So I guess at that point I was kind of like, you know what? I've just self-nerfed myself. Let's see how well I can do even with that self-nerf. I took it as a challenge. Why not? So in any case, the first game I played was Hot Water by Ulysses, also a Gen Con map. I believe Brandon, who's our tournament director, he's also part of Team SoCal. He's the one who was kind enough to get us matching T-shirts. Much obliged, Brandon. It's a pleasure receiving those, and they look great. So he decided for this event, why don't we get practice on Gen Con maps? So we set up basically all maps that are in the Gen Con pool. So I was really grateful for that, and I'm sure all of us going to Gen Con were as well. Our full Team SoCal, all 5 of us from Team SoCal, were at this event, so we got a lot of practice on it. So at this event, the first game I played was against a single Nacho. That is his handle on our Discord. So I played him before. He was in the Paradise tournament I played against him on, and he told me at the event, he watches the content in this channel, and he said, man, you found the most polite way to say that I was terrible at my last event. Like, he said, you were so diplomatic in how you spoke about how I played. He's like, you found such a kind way to say I was terrible at the last event. And I said, yeah, I try to be wholesome, you know. I want this channel to be non-toxic, you know. I want this to be a wholesome place where vibes are good. That's what I want for this channel. But I take your point. I take your point, a single Nacho. You want me to be more frank in how I think about the games I play. So I'll go ahead and be as frank as possible here, per your request. So single Nacho, I think, might be the single worst Heroscaper I have ever. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Sorry, single Nacho. You're a blast to play with. I enjoy playing you, and this time you brought a pretty strong army, so you can't be that bad if you brought this army to this event. You brought 4 squads of Romans, Marcus, and Agent Carr. So I just had a feeling someone was going to bring the Romans. This is a solid army for this event. Yeah, and so here's the map. As you can see, the new lava tiles haven't been released quite yet, but it didn't really matter for this event, so we were using the D&D's rock outcrops. And so yeah, there's my backup army, my whipped up on the spot army. And yeah, so we'll talk about the game and how it played out. That's a disengage glyph, and that is a initiative glyph. So I remember, I think I moved Raylin up early so that she, you know, as she could provide that debuff in this area here. And, you know, he opened with his Romans, pretty standard. I remember most of them were clustering together for shield wall right around here, pretty close to the glyph. And I remember for a while he controlled that glyph, and that actually gave them a lot of mobility to position, engage my figures. And I remember I put Raylin right here on lava, and she got locked down by some Romans, and so she was stuck there for a while, and I think she did take a couple of lava wounds. But one crazy thing that happened is Maladrix eventually moved up and engaged Marcus right there, and she got the parasite on him, or she infested him, and incredibly, she popped him with a parasite. I brought back a Festering Honor Guard, and single Nacho looked at it, and he remembered how many times I got parasite in the Paradise tournament that I went to, and he's like, how many freaking times have you rolled for that? And I shrugged. I just said, man, I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry, I guess. Anyway, so that was a little rough to see that. However, I think had I not gotten it, I probably would have lost this game, because it ended up being a pretty close game. I think it came down to just my phalanx over here. I tried to infest Carr. I don't think I got it. And then Queen Maladrix died. Raylan, I think, did move off of lava here, provided her debuff a little bit longer. But then the phalanx you can see there's no legionnaires on the board. That's because I loaded up the phalanx early on. But the phalanx is great because you can kind of ferry the squad protected to where it needs to be. And then when it's time to drop it, you can just deposit them all on the ground. So that's eventually what I did. I got the phalanx all the way up here, dropped all my legionnaires, and they were able, legionnaires versus legionnaires, they were able to eke out a win right there. So I think Marcus had 3 lives left when he got parasited. So that allowed me to catch up on points, and I did eventually take this win. So Single Nacho, if you're watching, I hope you appreciate my frankness. And I hope you understand that you are not the worst player I've ever played, and you're a pleasure to play with. And yeah, thank you for the game. So there's all that there. And then we'll go to game 2. This was on Embroiled by Ulysses. And this time I faced, yes, this was Leo, I believe. Once again, a Death Chaser army with Adalbert and Adalbert and a Diminutive Guard. And so I was like, come on, man. How many times do I have to fight the Chasers at Adalbert? Dylan was actually at this event, and I asked Dylan, I was like, man, or I said to Dylan, like, man, yeah, the designers of Adalbert really messed up making him bondable with the Chasers. That was a mistake. This army's too freaking good, man. I mean, there's ways to beat it. I get it, but jeez, it's so brutal. It's so brutal to fight. But in any case, here it is. That's what I fought against. And I remember asking Leo. I said, why didn't you bring in Narak? And his reasoning was, it's better to have more chasers than Narak. I'd rather have 4 squads of chasers without Narak than like 3 squads of chasers with Narak. So I think, I think that's a compelling argument, So anyway, this is the game I fought with him. I don't remember a whole lot about it. As you can see, he charged all the way here. And I remember what he did is he remembered, I'm sure, from the store championship, that double infestation I got on him, where I infested both his Maladrix and his Primus, and I got the Parasite both times. So he was particularly frightened of my Maladrix here, and he played super conservatively. I remember multiple times during the game, he's like, "I'm not going to fall for your bait. I'm not going to fall into the trap this time." He kept Adalbert very safely away from Maladrix, and he forced my Maladrix to run around fighting Chasers. Chasers were damaging Raylan all over, and just like I had to split my order markers between, like 3 or 4 different figures, and 3 or 4 different army cards, whereas he could just throw all his markers on the Chasers, and I couldn't fight that efficiency that his army had, and he kept Adalbert safely away. There was so many careful plays. Like the game took a very long time. I was like, if I can just infest him, if I can just infest Adalbert and get that pop, I might be able to swing this thing around. But Leo, to his credit, he didn't let that happen, and that's one way to fight Maladrix. She can never infest you if she doesn't engage, right? So yeah, eventually Leo did take the win here. So I was going 1-1. Leo, as always, it's a great pleasure playing you. I love it. I don't love the Chasers and Adalbert, but I love playing you. It's a pleasure. So anyway, I was going 1-1 on that one. Next up was Firefly by, the map is Firefly by Dünd, also a Gen Con map. And this time I was facing a super creative army, and one I was like, wow, this is awesome that someone leaned into VC2. So this is a Omega Blade, and he brought the zombie, the undead army. So he brought Ataraxis, the Star Lich, which is the 3D printed figure right there. Really weird esoteric powers on her, but a cool figure nonetheless. Iskra, Essenwine, and the Wretcheds. So the Wretcheds start off the board. 3 squads of zombies, and then 2 zombie Hulks. So these are not the actual Zombie Hulk figure that you could see on the Zombie Hulk figure card, but since this is a melee-only event, proxying is a lot more acceptable, right? Because hit zones really come into play with range, but since there's no range in this format, you can kind of proxy whatever. So, and hey, those look like Zombie Hulks to me, so no complaints. So yeah, that way, and I believe he self-painted these, so Really, maybe these are valid sculpts for them. I'm not sure. You can let me know in the comments if you recognize these sculpts. But in any case, this was the army I was facing. And yeah, we were on this map, and so most of the fighting occurred here in this area, this half of the map over here. I remember Iskra. I think I was able to kill Iskra before the Wretched summoned in, so I felt good about that. But I had to move in I wanted to move in Raylan early so I could start debuffing the this whole most of his army here. And I forget how I moved Maladrix and the Phalanx. But I remember one of his zombie hulks got here. I killed the zombie hulk, and then his normal zombies, his little zombies here, they got zombie onslaught and killed one of my large figures. You know what that means? When a large figure dies and someone has a dead zombie hulk, the zombie hulk rises. And I just didn't appreciate that in the game. I was like, oh no, one of his hulks is back. And so the zombie hulk came back, and I think once that happened, I think the zombie Hulk revival happened right over here. But once that happened, I just couldn't swing the momentum back in my favor. And after that, quickly, the zombies, they were killing Festering Honor Guard, and they were reviving themselves. After that, it was a bit of a sweep. So for a second, it looked like I might have been doing okay, but I felt good about killing I felt good about killing Iskra before the Wretched summoned in. But nope, no cigar. Close, but no cigar. So Omega Blade, really creative army. Really glad to see someone leaning into VC at a VC event. Yeah, and it's cool to see the zombies. The zombies don't see a lot of competitive play, so that was a really cool pick for this event. And yeah, pleasure playing you. And yeah, so my day was not looking too great. I was going 1-2 at that point. And so I played, I did go to game 4. This was Ice Cider by Caps, another Gen Con contest winner. And this time I was facing Kyle, also Crazed something. I forget your exact handle, Kyle, but I do remember your name, and I've played Kyle many times. Great sport, great player. Quite a Death Knights fan. I feel like I've faced Death Knights many times from Kyle. He's had some really creative armies in the past. He and I actually, in a Master Set only tournament, he and I were the ones in the championship, and that was a... Yeah, I was really impressed with his army for that event. But in any case, he brought Boreos, 4 squads of Death Knights, Raylan, and from what I can see, it looks like he could have fit a Demutif guard into that, and the Demutifs would have bonded with the Death Knights. For whatever reason, he didn't, or I don't have record of what he brought to fill in those remaining 20 points. So... in any case, if you're watching this, Kyle, and you recognize the army and you see maybe, did I miss a figure, let me know. But in any case, those are the figures that you definitely did bring. See, I don't see them here. This is, you see a different sculpt for Boreos, but it's fine. That looks like a whirlwind to me, But in any case, he had Raylan and I had Raylan. And I remember there was a moment where his Raylan was right here, my Raylan was right here, and it was just kind of this weird mirror showdown. But in any case, I held my ground here. His Death Knights started moving up. Boreos came in, and Boreos was good at ferrying Death Knights forward. Now, I do remember that, and also I think he had a Death Knight here, grabbed this glyph, and he charged up his army with some disengage. I remember that even with Raylan and the Death Knights dropping my defense by, dropping my defense to nothing, when he rolled for his attacks on the Death Knights, he got several whiffs on attacks. So his rolls were not great this game, and that certainly affected the outcome. But yeah, once this contest here was decided, I think Boreos may have flown here, and then Raylan got the jump on him and stabbed him. And in any case, Boreos went down, and then I forget exactly how Raylan went down, but basically I mainly remember fighting happened kind of mostly in the middle of the board, and there were some bad rolls on Kyle's part, and eventually the bugs were able to swing momentum in their favor, and we cleared out the rest of the board and took the win. But yeah, Kyle, thanks for playing, if you're watching this. And yeah, I know you like the Death Knights, and the Death Knights can be great. For a while, a lot of us were saying, like, oh yeah, this is the SoCal meta. Everyone's running the Death Knights. Because when the first Age of Annihilation Master Set came out, Raylan, everyone was like, oh, Raylan with the Death Knights dropped defense by 3. Wow. And a bunch of people were running the Death Knights, and they were doing really well in a lot of our local tournaments in our area. But yeah, great player, great game, and appreciate you playing. So now I was at 2-2 at this point. 2 wins, 2 losses. And I asked Brandon, the tournament director, I said, okay, how likely am I realistically to get to the playoffs? And Brandon said, well, you have to win your next game. You have to be 3-2 win-loss with your next game. And even then, it's not guaranteed. Even then, you have to get into playoffs with matchup strength alone. So I thought, okay, well, this next game's going to be pretty important. I have to win this one. So this was once again on Embroiled, and wouldn't you know it, I was facing Brandon himself, and he brought the Hoplotrons, and I thought, what the heck, man? I should have brought my hops. So anyway, I was bummed about that, but he brought Q11. He brought Q11 and X17 with 7 Hoplotrons. Really tanky army. And Q11 very good, very good in this format, but I was kind of dissuaded from theory crafting with him because I thought, well, he's got a ranged special attack. Don't pick him. He's 160 points. But again, I think Brandon was wise. He looked at it and he thought, no, he'll earn those 160 points in melee only. It's 4 health, 6 life, or 4 health, 6 defense with his hammer attack, 6 attack. Yeah, he'll do well. And so anyway, we'll talk about this game. What I remember is Brandon did open with Q11, started moving up here. And I remember I moved Raylan. I tried to move Raylan up here. For whatever reason, I always liked opening with Raylan. And I tried to move Maladrix. I think I moved Maladrix up here. Anyone who's played Maladrix knows, while Maladrix is no doubt an extraordinarily good figure, she's got 2 fat legs that really can mess up with her placement. Like, I couldn't place Maladrix on these 2 hexes here because her legs would conflict with the ruin. I did try to get her up here, but it just left a hex open on even level for Q11 to grab, and it prevented me from getting the high enough attack with height to get through that armor. Hoplotrons were moving around. They were punching some of my Festering Honor Guard down onto low elevation, and they were getting hits on them. I think this was an initiative glyph, or maybe a move glyph, I'm not sure, but this was an important glyph to grab, and Brandon moved his X17 onto the glyph, so as soon as one of my guard grabbed moved next to him, they were locked down with his Cyber Claw. So I thought, well, I think what I probably should do is use my Phalanx to try to engage his X17, because if I have a loaded Phalanx attacking X17 will lose his melee defense because it's a special attack, and I can attack multiple times. That should be able to chew through his 5 life pretty speedily. And I was doing it, but I was eating through his life, but not as fast as I would have liked. And I just my Phalanx just ended up getting stuck there. He just couldn't do anything. So that was pretty rough. X17 held his own pretty long there and held up a lot of my units that I might have preferred to move to the contest happening here. Eventually, Maladrix fell. Q11, correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon, I think I got Q11 down to like 1 life. I just couldn't crack him. And then Raylan died, and Maladrix died. And then at that point, I had very little hope of getting through the remaining Hoplotrons, and I don't think I even killed Q11. And with that, I died pretty fast. Oh yeah, I remember I moved it. This was a loading glyph right here, so I thought that'll be pretty handy to get Infestation, which I don't think I ever got on Q11, sadly, but I wanted to get the +1 to the roll to improve the likelihood of a Parasite pop. But it didn't happen, alas. So with that, Brandon, great player. You're a great host, and thank you for putting all these events together and for getting us these t-shirts. Alas, I lost. And so with that, I was 2-3 for my score. And at that point, I realized I'm not going to make top cut. There wasn't really much of a reason for me to stay at the event. Yeah, I could stay to do Gen Con practice after, but I had a really long drive back to where I live. This, card addiction's pretty far away from where I live. So at that point, I waved everyone goodbye. I said, thanks for the games, guys. I'm out. So I said, peace, and I headed out. I packed up my contemporary figures. I packed up the the ant army I wasn't able to run. And I walked away with not my best day. Not a great final score, 2-3 win-loss. But let's go over the teams that did do well, because there were a few. First place, Brandon ended up taking it. So the Hoplotrons, again, this is my mind. I'm like, why didn't I run them? I could have done well. This army clearly did well. Alas, live and learn. So Hoplotrons took first place. That was great to see. Second place, this is one I was super happy to see. You ready for this? Tyler took second place. He took second place with his Ice Elementals, Iron Golem, and Boreos. This army turned out to be much smarter and a much better meta pick than I had previously thought. And I think Tyler was even like, I'm surprised I did this well. If you look at all the Gen Con maps, I think half of them have ice in it. So ice elementals are healing themselves all the time with cold healing. Really great pick. And Iron Golem ended up being a very important figure for Tyler, because one of the people playing at this event was Dutch, and Dutch brought the bees. He brought Mellifera, or Mellifera, however you say it. Oh my god, I'm getting hiccups. He brought four squads of bees, Mellifera and Sujoa, the classic bees army. He brought that, and he was fighting the constructs. And I think the constructs ended up winning, but they won in a very interesting way. So the bees just overwhelmed. I think they killed Talangol pretty fast. So Tyler was just down to his Iron Golem, but he got his Iron Golem on height. And Iron Golem gets a defense buff against special attacks. And the bees, the main way that the bees and Sujoa, the main way they do damage is through special attacks. So that one Iron Golem, he just tanked bee hits. He just tanked and he just didn't go down. And I think it ended up going to points, but the Iron Golem won on points. So yeah, I mean, I watched a little bit of that game, or like the tail end of it, and I was like, wow, now I know it next time I run the bees to be very scared of the Iron Golem. So that was a really interesting way that he beat a pretty strong army for the event. So Tyler took second place. Then third place, the Death Chasers ×4. This was Leo's army. Very, very good. Annoying, but good. So Leo took third place. Congrats on that. And then fourth place was I believe this was Aaron's army. This was not an army that I faced, but it was cool to see. The reason I highlighted Revenant Acolytes is because I'm 90% sure he certainly ran at least one squad. He may have run two, and I think he ran two because that's the way the points worked out. Aaron, if you're watching this, and if I got that wrong, let me know. But in any case, it was Festering Honor Guard, one Frost Giant, one Grave Grim, and Queen Maledrix, with at least one squad of Acolytes, likely two. So another really cool creative army. Yeah, so great games all around, and that was my final score for this event. Now, as always, in every Heroscape event, there are always takeaways, no matter what happens. And this event actually produced a surprising number of takeaways for me to think about. And so going into the takeaways, they are to read the freaking format next time, you idiot. So yeah, that's the takeaway. That's the takeaway. I was an idiot. I skimmed the format. I missed a very important detail, and that ended up costing me. That caused me to have a very bad day because I misread the format. There was no reason I needed to do that poorly that day, but I did. It's a self nerf. So take formats seriously when you read them, because they can screw you if you don't read them correctly. So in any case, yeah, that was the main takeaway for that. But now moving on to, that was the last event I went to before Gen Con, and now let's talk a little bit about what to expect going into Gen Con. So me and the team SoCal, all five of us, that's Brandon, Dutch, Roxanne, Oscar/Ella, and then myself. All five of us will be going to Gen Con. We're really looking forward to it. Many of us are store champions, so many of us will get our day 2 buys. We're super excited about it. Couple things, I've been practicing a lot with them on online Heroscape. I forgot to share that. So for any online Heroscape veterans watching this video, a point I'll make about online Heroscape in a moment, but I'll make it now so I don't forget about it. Practicing for Gen Con on online Heroscape has finally converted me. I resisted online Heroscape for a very long time. I was just like, I don't like the top down. I don't like the interface. I resisted it for a very long time. I am now a convert. I have played it enough times. And the thing is, because I live so far away from all the other people in our team, that online Heroscape was just the only practical way for us all to get together and practice. And after enough games of Gen Con practice, I've realized, yeah, online Heroscape is a remarkable piece of software. It is an incredible tool for playing this game. So down the road, once I get a little bit more comfortable with online Heroscape, I might be joining some of your online Heroscape tournaments. I hope to, because I think that really is the best way to get the reps in, as they might say. So anyway, I have been fully converted to online Heroscape. I repent, I repent of my online Heroscape ways, and yeah, it's great software. Anyway, I'll cover these bullet points here. So Going into Gen Con, I am going to do a Gen Con tournament video. So I do hope to document the games I play kind of in this style. There will be a tournament video where I cover them, but it's going to be a little different. It's going to be like rapid fire and less in depth. I'm not going to do like play by plays or any of that. It's really just the volume of games is going to be so huge. I'm not going to be able, it's going to be impractical to do that. I'm going to be focusing purely on the armies that I face, the maps I played on, and then the win-loss outcome. So basically, okay, I played this person, they brought this army, we played on this map, who won? That was it. And I'm just gonna bam, 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 bam. I'm just gonna go down the list of the games for everything I play at Gen Con. If you are going to Gen Con, if anyone watching this channel plans to attend Gen Con, and you're interested in meeting, if you want to, finally shake hands and hopefully play a game or two, I will be there in a black shirt that says Team SoCal on it, and that shirt is also customized. It'll have my channel icon on it, the new one that I just made, or had help making. You'll see the Doggin face in the hex, and then you'll also see Doggin Days on one of the side sleeves. It's a black shirt. It says Team SoCal. Shouldn't be too hard to find me. So yeah, if you're interested in meeting and chatting and talking Heroscape, yeah, I will be there, and I avail myself for anyone who wants to get together. So there is that. And after Gen Con, I just want to say this. Like right now, all cylinders are firing on Gen Con practice. I'm taking this super seriously. Personally, I fully expect to get curb stomped. I think I'm going up against the best, and I think it's going to be a sweep. I think I'm going to get obliterated on day 2, personally. That's just my expectation, but it'll still be a good time, and I'm still training for it. So after Gen Con, just prepare for a bit of a content hiatus on the channel. There's some work stuff that I expect. It's going to be the busy season at my job, and I'm going to just kind of take a personal break from Heroscape. I can't keep up with all the releases Renegade's doing in terms of like buying stuff, and I just need to decompress a little bit from Heroscape after Gen Con, or maybe after Gen Con I'm gonna be like, that was great, more. Maybe that'll happen too. I don't know, but I'm just mentally prepared that there might be a bit of a hiatus. However, I have several videos that I want to get out by the end of 2025, because 2025, I'm playfully calling it the year of the Doggin. It's Dünd's 20th anniversary. So there's a lot of very special videos I plan to get completed by the end of 2025, including, for anyone who, is a longtime viewer of the channel, I will get out the next like long form tier list video. I might change the format a little bit, but yeah, I'm still working on that and expect at least one more of those before 2025 is over. So yeah, just prepare for that. And the final point is, I'm hyped. I am super hyped about Gen Con. Going to Gen Con, because I've been playing Heroscape since I was a kid. I had known about Gen Con for a long time. I just never thought I'd be able to go. I was like, Heroscape's not big where I live. There's not a competitive scene where I live. It's only in the Midwest. I'll never get to play. Well, it finally happened. I finally got into competitive Heroscape, and it just feels like a long time coming. And I've wanted to go for my entire Heroscape life, and I'm just beyond hyped that I'm going. And I'm really looking forward to meeting some of you guys if you are going to Gen Con. And don't be a stranger. Come find me. Let's talk. And I look forward to playing everyone. And even if I get curb stomped, I'll be curb stomped by the best. And that won't be so bad. So anyway, yeah, that's all I have to say about this. And as always, everyone, I really appreciate you watching. I'm sure I've kept you for far longer than I needed to. I'm very grateful for the time you guys give these videos. I hope they're enjoyable. I hope they're informative, and I hope that you guys got some painting or listened to this on your commute. Hopefully you did something productive with this in the background. So yeah, as always, folks, feel free to leave a comment. Appreciate the heck out of you guys. And for anyone going to Gen Con, I will see you in Indianapolis. Take care, everyone, and scape on.